Burger Town patties are never cooked in a microwave. Hello and welcome to what I believe is the biggest diplomacy game that has ever occurred. This is Imperial Chaos Europe. Look at that map. That's incredible. I'm here with Ezio. Hey Ezio.
Hello, hello.
And we both played in this 81-player game. Now, this was the brainchild of Flare, who is the creator of the Imperial Diplomacy variant. After we put out our last video, there was a huge rush of interest in the Imperial Diplomacy variant, and they were mid-changing it for the next playtest, right? So they were about 2 months out, I think, from running the next games. So they went, what can we do in the meantime? Well, we've got all these people who want to play a game, and the answer was this. Everyone has one supply center. There are 81 players on the board. We have just the Imperial Europe Theatre, right, here. And every single supply center is a different player. It's just absolutely insane.
For some context for our newer viewers, there is a Chaos variant on the standard diplomacy map that has 34 players and the similar restriction of one supply center per player. This is more than twice as big.
Yep.
It's a lot.
I was kind of concerned it wouldn't fill, right? Because 81 players is... It's a lot. I remember, I think the biggest variant I've ever played before this was probably Divided States on V-Diplomacy, and it took us like at least a month to fill 50 player slots. And this one they were looking to start within a couple of weeks with 81 players. So we put out a post on the YouTube channel, and the sign-ups filled within 1 minute of them going live, which was incredible as well. So yeah, we had 81 players all ready to go, and one more thing about this variant, it was public press. You couldn't message people in private. Everything you said had to be in 5 public Discord channels, basically. Each of them had a name after a different type of tree. I think it was like Alder Hall, Birch Hall, Cedar Hall, Dahoma Hall, and Elm Hall, the last of which... We'll get to why that one was interesting in a bit. But it meant that there was just this stream of information from 81 players all trying to coordinate across the map at the same time, right? You had people down here in Turkey all trying to make their plans, and people talking over them from England, right? And then you had people like who wanted to arrange a stab or something and didn't want other people to see what they were doing, just hopping into someone else's conversation and sending a message in the middle of it, atting the person they needed to coordinate with, just in the hope that the flood of communication would drown out any chance of their opponents seeing what they said. It was utterly brilliant and utterly insane. And I was really happy to be part of it. I assume it was the same for you, Ezio.
Yeah, it was great. Would recommend everyone who watches this video goes and joins a Chaos game. We should all ping Flare and command him to run another one. Alternatively, ask him to let other people run so that he can focus on Imp Dip 2, which we're going to be playing in. And then other people can just run a Chaos variant, but we'll see.
Yeah, on that note, I should plug the Imperial Diplomacy Discord server. You can join it in the link below, in the link in the description. It's not currently running any Chaos games, it's currently signing people up for the next edition of the actual Imperial Diplomacy variant, which is a bit more sensible than this one. But it's still an awesome place to be, and if another thing like this happens, that will probably be the place where it will happen. And also, as Ezio said, it would be awesome if we could just get everyone to ping him and say, hey, run this on the full Imperial Diplomacy map, right? We could get 300 and something players and just do this. Oh my god. Anyway, Ezio, we had the choice. Well, okay, so there was a sign-up form initially, and you could put down your country preference, right? And by country, I obviously mean like city-state, which of these nations you want to play. If you put down the same as someone else put down, you basically, your names go into the hat, and one of them gets pulled out to play that country, and the other people who pick that will get random country assignments out of the unpicked ones. So I think there were like 4 people or something that chose Spitsbergen up here, for example, and so a lot of them didn't get the choice. For me, my country was completely unopposed. I picked Ghent over here in Belgium. I picked it because on the Imperial Diplomacy video, we had someone commenting saying, "Hey, I'm from Ghent. It's nice to see that this province is called Ghent instead of being called Brussels or something else like that." I thought that was a cool comment to get. I'll pay them some tribute by picking Ghent in this game. Where were you, Ezio?
Stockholm. I got family that lives in Sweden. Stockholm is the place that matches it. So, yep, I went Stockholm.
Yep, it's as good a reason as any, and I think tactically, like strategically, your pick was much better than mine. Just from a, I don't know, a safety perspective, right? If you can solidify this kind of area, you're going to be a lot safer than if you manage to solidify an area over here that's surrounded by other players, right?
Yes. I mean, look, I don't think that Stockholm is actually a particularly safe place to be. I have 3 neighbors, Gothenburg, who has no other neighbor other than me. So I think technically Gothenburg is very likely to build an army and then just annihilate you. Um, but I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of it. But I had to pick it for the aforementioned reasons. Um, and we can talk about how it worked out, obviously. But I think strategically, it's not one of the stronger countries on the board, like some people are claiming. Um,
I should correct that too. I think this region in general is a really nice place to have your power if you end up doing well. But you are correct that this whole Stockholm-Gothenburg situation, it reminds me a lot of like Portugal and Spain in classic Chaos, where
yeah,
basically Spain has 0 leverage in that situation. They can't get into Portugal, right? Because no one can support them there. Just like here, Stockholm can't really attack Gothenburg unless they convince Gothenburg to move out. Whereas the other way around, the Portugal will be asking Marseille, "Hey, can you just support me into Spain?" Or saying to Marseille, "Hey, I'll support you into Spain," right? And that's just a much more appealing opening, and that's kind of what you might expect to happen in this area.
yes. Especially, like there's the similar thing with Oslo. It's a different dynamic because Trondheim and Bergen both only border Oslo and nothing else. So they have a very interesting dynamic where if one of them supports the other in, it could be very brutal. So I think it was less likely for Gothenburg to support Oslo into Stockholm because Oslo is going to be dying, but perhaps Umeå was a likely competitor, or just get supported into Stockholm in the fall. I was terrified. I did not like the start to have so much competition immediately and need to make so many people friendly right off the bat. It was a daunting challenge, but again, I did it solely for Swedish pride. Um,
And you did actually end up in Stockholm during this game, right? Almost towards
yes,
the end of it, yeah. But that's something
yeah,
to talk about when we get there.
as we get there. Yeah, no, I was looking for strength. I think the strongest start, if I was trying to win the game, would have been Cairo.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think
Or
I think
Berbers,
Cairo or
maybe?
Aleppo. Nah,
No?
Cairo.
Okay. Yeah,
I could
Aleppo
see
has no
Aleppo as well.
neighbors,
A
right?
similar thing. Yep. Well, just the one, right?
Well, yeah,
The
one
one
neighbor
up in
that they
Georgia,
can...
they can mess with, and you're gonna build an army almost always and be very happy. And Cairo, I'd build an army and be very happy about it. Maybe I shouldn't build an army actually, but I would have built an army anyways. I just always build armies. I should build a fleet. Yeah, a fleet, it would be better. Anyways, I think Cairo or Aleppo were the strongest places to start.
So that's
Um,
actually super interesting because I think a lot of, well, the pre-game discussions, right, on strength, there weren't that many, like, you weren't allowed to actively negotiate in the pre-game, but there were still a lot of
yeah,
discussions about the game. The strongest powers generally pointed out were the island nations, right? So Spitsbergen, Reykjavik,
sure.
Dublin, Azores, Canaries, these places that are really hard to attack initially, because if someone wants to attack them, they have to build a fleet and then come out of their supply center, right? So if you're in Porto and you want to attack Azores, for example, you have to leave your current supply center to attack it, which then means someone can slip in behind you and murder you. So there's like that level of safety, but there's also it's difficult to expand, right? At the same time, not impossible to expand, but you're further away from everyone in the same way that they're far away from you. I think would be my view on that. Would you still have like gone for something like Spitsbergen if you were going for a powerful nation?
Maybe. I don't know. I think like, hey, like if I could, that would be something we should do is release a explicit tier rank where we put every single power in our list of tiers to put them in places where we have the S tier of Cairo and Aleppo, and then we have A tier of whomever else. That could be fun. I'm not 100% sure. I don't love the island nations at all. I think they are much more contested and more at risk than they appear. Because they're safe if nobody wants to move to Sea of Azores, right? But oh wait, lots of people want to be in Sea of Azores because it's a really good place. And Canary Basin makes Canaries safe. I think Canaries are more safe than Azores, but like, if you look at Spitsbergen, if no one wants to go to Norwegian Sea ever, then Spitsbergen is safe. But like, does Trondheim not want to go to Norwegian Sea? Like, I don't know. Does Iceland not want to go to Greenland Sea? Like, it's the answer is yes, they do. So
yeah, I think it also like
the reason why I like Cairo, right, was if you look at Cairo, nobody wants like the only reason why Aleppo is moving to Levant is to attack you, right? And so then it's just Tripoli that you have to make friends with, and it's the very possible thing to do. So
yeah,
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's all good. So the like, I've kind of forgotten what. Oh yeah, no. So the argument I was making about why these things are strong, right? Or the one that was very persuasive in the pre-game picks, was that these people don't want to leave their home supply centers to attack you because someone else will walk in. That's solved by negotiation, of course, right? If you can get a solid enough alliance with the people around you, you can leave your supply center. You just have to have a good read on whether the person is trustworthy or not. And in a public press game, I almost think it's the ability to do that is kind of amplified, right? Because if you tell a lie, you are not just telling a lie to the person you're telling a lie to. You are showing to everyone, I'm willing to stab right now. And if you do that at the start of the game, you may be a bit screwed by people who then go, oh, well, this person isn't trustworthy, let's gang up on them. Right? So if you, for example, if Porto went for Azores and Lisbon takes that opportunity to walk into Porto and kill them, then all of these neighbours go, oh look, well there's someone we have an excuse to attack now, let's jump on them. So the island nations are less safe for that reason as well, I think, than they initially appeared. But yeah.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. Okay. So other stuff that was going on in pregame, CaptainMeme, you were going to talk about a lot of it.
Yes, so we discussed this just before the recording. I was like, hey Ezio, which of us wants to take which of the pre-game memes? And Ezio said, I don't know any of them, because I wasn't paying any attention.
I joined the game once the game started, and Flare said, you are Stockholm, and I said, great.
Okay, so usually I wouldn't cover things that happen in the pre-game for games, in general, because you're not allowed to negotiate over that time, right? But there was a lot of chat over random things that were to do with the board, and potential things that could happen on the board, and that ended up having a pretty massive impact on the game itself. Apparently not for Ezio, because he didn't pay any attention to it, but for the people who were actually in the chat and engaged before the game started, there were three main things that have a big impact in this game, right? Arguably four. Okay, so three that I'm going to cover right now. The first is the Bavarian wheel. You will notice here that there is a pattern of, depending on which centers you're counting, 5 to 7 centers here that have the potential to move in a wheel. So Nuremberg goes to Prague, Prague goes to Vienna, Vienna goes to Trieste, Trieste goes to Venice, Venice goes to Innsbruck, Innsbruck goes to Freiburg, and Freiburg goes to Nuremberg. I spotted this at the start of the game, and just making some, small talk with the people there, I posted a screenshot of this area, and I said, hey, wouldn't it be funny if these players moved in a circle for the entire game? And everyone was like, ah ha ha ha, and then the Bavarian wheel became a meme, and people started going, oh, this is what these people should actually do. And at some point it crossed from the level of, this is a joke, to the level of, this had better happen, because it would be funny. And that has a pretty... Well, we'll get to it in a second, but it has a pretty big impact on what happens in this game. The second one is the World Convoy. So, this is... I don't know exactly how this one began, because I wasn't involved in this at all, but I think someone mentioned the possibility of convoying from Arkhangelsk here, all the way around these ocean territories, through the Mediterranean, and ending up in Levant. So it's essentially your equivalent to the St. Petersburg to Syria convoy in standard diplomacy, right? It's a completely ridiculous thing that has no strategic value whatsoever, but people do it to show off and to meme. To say, hey, we managed to get enough people on board to do this incredibly stupid thing that has zero purpose, but it's funny. And this, again, ends up having a pretty massive impact on the first turn of the game. Again, we'll cover that when we get through builds. The third thing is bumbleism, which, Ezio, you did get involved with. May not have been in the pregame, but this certainly had an impact on you. We'll get...
Yeah, this did affect my game.
Yeah, and the reason
I can tell you what I think I understand about the bumbleism religion.
Go for it.
I think they'd be funnier. A bunch of people in game randomly decided to put Bumble in their name. These people all said, we're gonna be allies.
Is that...
Yep, that's bumbleism.
Okay, so, I will clarify this, because I was a bumble at this point. This is the pregame, right? You're not technically supposed to negotiate, but people in diplomacy do... They like skirting the line with things, maybe. The very first thing that happened, the player who was going on to be Helsingfors over here, we didn't know what power they were at the time, they are called Bumble. That is just their Discord name. They went ahead and said, I will ally with anyone who puts the word Bumble in their name. And so people start putting the word Bumble in their name. And suddenly, there is a pretty sizable contingent of people who have the word Bumble somewhere in their name.
I'm sorry. Wait, he says he's gonna ally with anyone who has Bumble in the name in the pregame?
I think so. Okay, I may be...
That's absolutely absurd.
I may be
no
libeling,
way should that be allowed.
I think that was how it happened. It has been a while since this game started.
Oh yeah, I'm just gonna ally anyone who said, oh come on, you can't say who you're gonna ally with in the pregame.
Well, I mean, it was clearly a joke though, right? And actually...
It's clearly not, it's a public press game!
And in actuality, these players barely worked with each other at all. When you get to the game, the ones who did work together were working together because they were in other alliances together. The whole Bumble thing keeps going through the entire game and basically has no effect other than some extremely funny things that happen through the first, 4 years, which we'll get to when we get to them. But these players were spread out everywhere, right? I was one of them, Helsingfors was another. There were a bunch in Britain, there were a bunch in Spain, there were a few down here in Morocco. I think there was, one somewhere over here. And, of course, there were a few in Scandinavia, including the Bumble themselves and Narva. I think, Prussia might have been one, I can't really remember. But this thing was marked as a religion before the game started, just because of how many people had put the word Bumble in their name, and people started, saying, oh, we're following the holy word of Bumble and stuff. And so that ends up having a little bit of an impact. But that is all the pre-game stuff, apart from something that is going to have a pretty massive impact in this game as well, and which you will be very familiar with if you've watched our two previous variant commentaries, the Hellenic Diplomacy one and the Imperial Diplomacy one. There is a player in this game called Salt. And Salt has a bit of a reputation for, stabbiness. Let's just say that.
Okay, to be clear, he hasn't stabbed me, just me.
Yes, okay, it's me specifically. And he didn't even stab me, right? I stabbed him a bunch first, but that was because he stabbed everyone else, and I kind of saw that his power level was going through the roof, right? And then in that Imperial Diplomacy game, this is slight spoilers, but not massive ones, we had this endless war, myself and Salt, basically, because of that. And it's almost become a meme. Salt has become a character in Diplo Strats at this point, to the point that people who are very familiar with the Diplo Strats video know who Salt is. They know that Salt is quite a stabby person, especially since this game came out before the Hellenic one, so you hadn't had the chance to put out... like, this game started before the Hellenic video came out, sorry, so you hadn't had your chance to put the... oh, Salt is actually a really nice person because he didn't specifically stab me this game. Point of view forward. But it did mean that...
The important point of view.
Prior to the game, we were, like, not exactly slinging insults at each other, but certainly, like, bigging up one another's threat levels in the pre-game chat, like myself and Salt. And I think at some point, Salt created an event in the server that was set for the day that the game began, that was just titled "Salt Declares War on Meme." And I said I would declare war in response. And I was kind of hoping he would draw a faction that was a long way away from me. And in actuality, he drew Kiel, which, as you may notice, is not a long way away from me at all. It's like 3 spaces. So that ends up having an impact in the first year as well. Oh boy, alright. So that covers basically the entire pregame. One more rule to mention: you are allowed to build anywhere in this variant. You do not have to hold your home SC to build. That's just the case for any Chaos game, and it makes sense, right? Otherwise it's going to be really difficult to build ever. So with that, the turn begins with a build phase. Ezio, what was going on for you?
An important rule to know: this game is only going to last 8 years.
Oh yes, that's super important. And
rather than needing a Druid draw, it has a set deadline of 8 years in game.
Yeah, you are not allowed to draw in this game, and the winner is just the person who has the most supply centers at the end of 8 years. If there is a tie, then all the tied players get the win. That is it, I think.
Yep, there's no reward or anything for winning, but there are winners and there are losers. So
yes, and there will
bear
be
that in mind.
Potentially a lot of losers, given that there are AC1 players in this game, and you have to.
Nobody ever moved. We could all win.
This is true. This is true. If the wheel just wheeled and nothing else happened, they would win as well.
Yeah, that could work. If nobody ever moved, we could all tie for the first place. Okay, pre-game stuff is out of the way. Now we can talk about the real quote-unquote pre-game, which is before builds.
Yes.
Because but after our countries have been assigned, press can start, and we can start talking with everyone. Because as a standard in Chaos games, you can choose what unit you want to build in your center. So negotiations get started, and this is the fastest start to negotiations I've seen in any game, period. With really most players out of the 81 being on and active within the first hour or two, and people start going crazy. Do you want to start talking about your local area, me, or do you want me to start talking about mine?
You can start with yours. I do want to mention first, there are... So the important people, like, important people, not important people just in general, but important people to know of in this game, there are a few people who their names would be familiar to some who've watched our videos before. Obviously, myself and Ezio in Ghent and Stockholm, Salt and Kiel, as mentioned, not you wouldn't know this previously, but as mentioned from the pre-game, Bumble is quite an important figure in the storyline of this game so far. But Umea is also quite an important player in that they have played Chaos before quite a lot, and they also know myself and Ezio very well. If you've seen our previous Chaos game commentary from quite a long time ago now, actually, the player for Umea was playing, I think, Smyrna in that game, whatever the Turkish faction was that did very well, and he did extremely well in that game. So he knows how to handle public press chaos, and that is going to be quite an important factor in what happens in your story, I believe. Do you want to take it away?
Yeah, Fluminator was really important. Okay, so we need to zoom back to the game has just started. Okay, and my position, as you see with Stockholm, as I described in the pregame analysis, is incredibly tenuous with potentially 3 neighbors, and if they all build armies, they can all attack me, and that's really scary. If Gothenburg and Oslo build fleets, they're less likely to attack me. So there's some potential value there. But the negotiations right off the bat have multiple people telling Oslo and Gothenburg to build an army. Now, these people aren't neighbors of Oslo and Gothenburg. These people are Krakow and, like, I forget the other one. It was, like, Kiev or Novgorod. It was someone who's not Novgorod. It was definitely not Novgorod. But it was people who were not actually adjacent, who were not particularly relevant to the conversation, but were still telling them to build armies, and were getting traction on it. Very early in the game, and these people in like Oslo and Gothenburg seemed to be interested in doing this. Mostly Oslo. Oslo had confirmed to build an army very early, and that was terrifying. But also before I had joined the game even, Umia, Fluminator, sent out a massive post essentially declaring the formation of a new Viking alliance. This alliance would work in an interesting manner in that you could join the alliance and request a specific role in the alliance, and then you would be given that role, and that would give you authority over that part of the alliance. These roles were tactician, responsible for telling other people what moves to do, strategist, that's responsible for determining who is in the alliance and who is not. We have propagandist, responsible for spreading misinformation to everyone. We have cheerleader, responsible for keeping morale within the alliance up and doing other important things. And let me double check my list to make sure that I have all of the roles correct, because believe it or not, I did hop into the Viking alliance, which was really important. Oh my god. I have the list of people who are in it, but I don't have the roles listed out. Oh no.
That's fine. I don't think the roles ended
anyways.
up having that much of an effect, right?
Oh yeah, they did. Oh hell yeah, they did. Because I was a tactician.
Yeah, they had.
And I told everyone what to do.
That was quite important, yes. But I mean, the rest of the roles
critical.
didn't matter that much.
It
there
was
was one specific role I do remember that came in quite important, which was that Copenhagen was marked as the spy or something, the person who would join other alliances and try and make the Vikings win, basically. And this was in public, so everyone saw that, and everyone was just like, "Wait, Copenhagen, what?"
Yeah, it was a great role. Okay, also a critical role was the message transponder. Because in this game that has so many messages going so quickly, trying to keep track on everything, it was just impossible. But for the true chronically online of us, there was a very valuable role. The most chronically online, who was the most active in this game by far at the start, was Helsingfors, Bumble himself. And was given the role of message transponder, who was responsible for reading the game, being pro-Viking in all of these conversations and saying good things, but also saying, like telling us, specifically me and Umiya, things that happened in other alliances and other spheres of the world, so that we could have a sense of how this would affect us without needing to keep track of it ourselves. Truly one of the most important roles in the alliance, definitely a big one. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so those were the roles. Now, who made it into the alliance? Because this ends up being very big. So, we have Umiya as the organizer, we have Helsingfors as the message transponder, we have Stockholm as a tactics specialist, we have Oslo as the propaganda manager, we have Trondheim as the other tactics specialist to help reduce the power of the single role. I was supposed to have somebody else who I would bounce ideas off of and we would discuss it. We have Gothenburg as strategy specialist, determining who's going to join the alliance or not. We have Prussia as a strategy specialist. We have Arkhangelsk and Reykjavik, who were both given the explicit role of auditors, who are making sure people are not being lazy. But I don't. This is a note that I wrote during the game for who was in what, and so I have to trust this note. We'll come back to that auditor role later, I think. Great. We have Copenhagen, which is not a spy in Germany, and there's nothing to see there. We have oh, Spitsbergen wasn't part of the alliance yet.
Oh, really?
Interesting. Yep, nope, Spitsbergen's not here, not on the list. Dublin is our negotiation specialist, and Oslo is the propaganda manager, which I might have already mentioned.
Yes.
All right, there were definitely some people that I was expecting to have on this list that I made at the very start. Cool.
I do remember that your alliance basically included everyone in Scandinavia except Bergen, because Bergen didn't come online in time. And
yeah,
so,
but it also doesn't include Spitsbergen. That's cool.
That's interesting. But
I
like,
think I thought you were gonna eat them. Poor Bergen.
It is super interesting, right? Because when you see an alliance blob this big, you're like, well, where are those players going to go? Are they really all going to move together and trust that no one is going to walk into their supply center behind them, right? And I guess, as the tactician, you had the ability to make sure other people were taking more of a risk than you, right? But in general, it's a bit of an interesting thing to just look at. Also, if I recall correctly, I think you were basically the sole tactician, right? Trondheim didn't really do anything on the tactical front.
Said, "Yep, that sounds good, Ezio." Every time I submitted an order set to anyone.
That sounds pretty good.
That sounds great. Let's do it. That was the best tactician partner to have ever. I was so unbelievably happy to have. It let me tell other people to do whatever I wanted. And for the most part, for the most-ish kind of sort of part, they did, which was amazing. And I think the Vikings were successful because they listened to me.
Right, that's quite the statement to make at the start of the game.
Yep. Cool. So, this is an alliance that was formed that people seemed to buy into, that this is a thing that was happening. And this was what was in my local region, was we have the Vikings and we have the non-Vikings. And so trying to figure out how to coordinate the Vikings to get growth is going to be a thing that we can talk about in a bit. But I think we've spent enough time talking about the immediate local area around me, CaptainMeme, in this tiny corner of the world. We should talk a little bit about what happened in your tiny little corner of the world.
Okay, well, first off, I do want to say this is not to do with my corner of the world, but another alliance that formed immediately was called the Island Nations, I think, and it was just everyone who started on islands. So Sicily, Sardinia, Corsica, Baleares, Canaries, Azores, Dublin, Reykjavik, and Spitsbergen. They made like a really cool flag that had all of those islands on it, in like a circle, like the European Union flag, but with the stars replaced by the islands. I really like that. But also, that alliance immediately then started trying to push for the World Convoy to happen, right? So this pre-game meme that had Archangelisk getting convoyed to Levant. And they were like, okay, well, we'll start this game off with a meme. We'll start this game off with everyone internationally cooperating to get this one player's army from one side of the world to the other. I wonder how well that went. Getting international cooperation, always a great idea. They had to pull in some other players, namely some people in Spain also agreed to help, I believe. But that's going to end up being a factor in the spring. Right now, if we go back to my part of the world, I am in Ghent. And immediately, the first message that gets sent by anyone in this game is Amsterdam atting myself, Utrecht, and Luxembourg, and saying, hey, let's form Benelux. Let's form this alliance. And I go ahead and say, yeah, that sounds good to me. Like, getting into an alliance immediately, and it being with all of your neighbors, so you don't have to worry about, like, the people walking into you necessarily, that's a pretty good idea. And you'll find in this game that a lot of the alliances that form, they're based around these, like, real-life countries or groups of countries, even into the late game, right? Just because that's the easiest way to pitch an alliance in the first place, right? Hey, we're all part of this country on the real board. Let's make this country in
in the real world.
in the real board.
Life is just a board game.
Life is just a board. This is true.
2D world.
I am indeed a flat earther. Please do not clip that. Anyway, we also had, along those lines, we had Morocco formed an alliance, we had Portugal formed an alliance, Spain formed an alliance. Basically, a lot of nations like that, right? So,
is Portugal not part of the Spanish alliance?
So, I think they were working together, but I don't think they were initially, like, in lockstep. They all agreed to build fleets only. And this is actually something that comes on in the first turn as well, because all of these regions around Spain said, hey, we're going to build a fleet. And Madrid goes, okay, yeah, I'll wave my army. That'll be fine. Because, you'll all have fleets, and that would be incredibly amusing if I'm just the only person who manages to wave an army and still be fine on the first year.
Wave?
Yep.
Wow.
And they actually did intend to wave. And then the GM came in and said, I will treat any waves on the first build as an NMR. I'm going to enter a build anyway, right?
No.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
So Madrid tries to wave and builds an army anyway.
Wow. I can't believe that, Flare. No way.
Again,
no way.
If I'm getting parts of this wrong, I'm sure the people who are playing in this game will correct me in the comments. For one, because we advertise this game on the channel, right, a whole lot of people on this board watch the videos, so I think we're going to get a lot of comments from people who were part of this game, and we would love to hear the stories from individual players, because as much as I wanted to cover everything that happens and tried to read a lot of, like, the confessionals and voids, there was just no way I was getting to 81 players worth of information there. So please go ahead and comment the real stories below if I'm saying anything wrong.
Call him out on his bullshit. Not me though. I'm gonna be right on everything I say. So don't call me out. Just agree with me in the comments below. But call me out on his. Yeah.
Yes. But I do actually think that was the case. The Madrid tried to waive their build and then were told, no, you're not allowed to do that.
Wow.
I think this is going to be a bit of a repeated thing in this commentary where we leave something on a cliffhanger because we have to talk about something else that's happening on the board before we get back to that. That is going to be important, but it comes in next turn. Over here, I get into this Benelux alliance, right? And it's myself, Utrecht, Amsterdam, and Luxembourg. I'm looking at this and going, hey, I love that idea, especially if these powers both agree to build fleets. Right? Because if Utrecht builds a fleet, that means they can't support anyone into Ghent. I'm much safer that way. My initial strategy coming into this game was I want to make myself look like an alliance player, so I want to try and join a big alliance, right? And then find an opportunity to grow at a time where it doesn't feel like a step. So if someone else in the alliance gets greedy and tries to attack someone, then I will go ahead and try and rally a bunch of people against them and get as many supply centers out of that rallying as I can. My hope was to be able to do that without going too far away from my HSC, because if I go far away from my HSC, I might be the person who gets stabbed and eliminated in that way, right? I did not want this game to be over early on for me, so I play a bit more paranoid than I probably should in the early game because of that.
So how do you feel about Paris?
Yeah, so that's the interesting question here, right? We got invited to this alliance. Everyone says yes. Luxembourg immediately goes and says, hey, then you and I are working against Paris, right? I don't remember if they outright requested to be supported in, but I think they immediately asked to be supported in. And I was like, okay, well that... I'm not feeling good about that, right? Because if you look at this arrangement, Luxembourg should always be supporting me into Paris if we're working against them. That's just my opinion on that situation. I can then support them into Dijon or something. We can work together to push down south. If I push Luxembourg into Paris, means he's very insistent on getting his supply center early on, right? He's leaving his own supply center at risk doing that, whereas if I push in, it's just alliance members behind me, unless the English come in to attack me. So this just felt illogical, and it felt to me like, okay, Lux is just looking for a dot right now, right? And I'm not sure I want to give that dot, given if he does manage to get to 2, where does he then go? He probably goes south. He'd probably be happy to stick with me. But if I've built an army to support him in, where's my army going? I have to stab someone in the Netherlands in order to continue. Maybe Lux sees that army as a threat and just takes it out immediately, just pivots against me, right? And if these guys have built fleets, there's not much we can do on that front. So Luxembourg is asking, hey, can we coordinate against Paris? And Paris shows up and goes, what? What are you guys doing? I'm already under threat here. And Paris starts talking to everyone in France. France is a bit less active than everyone else right now. Like, Nantes, I don't think had showed up. Dijon had basically not shown up. But Paris was atting them and going, hey, emergency, can we form this kind of coalition against these other powers? And I was just like, oh, whoa, hold on, Paris, I haven't agreed to support Lux into you. Please stop this. I do not want to face, like, the wrath of the whole of France right now. So I go ahead and say to Luxembourg, hey, you know, I don't think it makes sense for us to do this, to attack Paris. How about we just work with them instead? Because you two can push down south, right, together as armies, and that gives me the freedom to go north against England or something. And England is a whole different story on this turn, I'll get to them in a second. But Paris goes yes, and Luxembourg goes, okay, yes, that sounds good to me. And then I think Paris wanted some more assurance that I was going to do what I said. And so I said, hey, yeah, I'll build a fleet. I'll build a fleet to make sure that, you know, we're locked in as this alliance. You don't need to watch your back at all. And, like, Dijon hasn't been around, so you guys can support Paris into Dijon, and then Paris can support Luxembourg into Strasbourg, and then we're good. And they were like, yeah, okay, that sounds good to me. And so, panic over, Paris stops trying to form this, like, French alliance, even though they're still talking to people. And I'm kind of sitting pretty, but I've also now agreed to build a fleet, which may have been a mistake.
Yeah, I would be sad to build a fleet if I was in Ghent.
Yep. Now, the reason why I thought it was okay is what I was saying earlier, the English, right? So a lot of these areas have just formed their country alliances. So Portugal, Spain, Morocco, all of these people, they're negotiating with their neighbors to say, hey, let's form like a big cluster of people. The Vikings is obviously the biggest example of this off the bat. I think there was like Prussia, Warsaw, Krakow, Brandenburg were also a group. Is that the Polish Commonwealth? I think that was the Poland Commonwealth or something. And then Gdansk was working with like Wilno and Kiev and Rostock or something along those lines. That's an interesting region, but it's not one I had a lot of view on. So, and then stuff was happening down here that I have no idea about. I know the Italians got together and did something as well. But the English are the exception to this, or the British, I suppose. Off the bat, Edinburgh goes to these countries and just starts immediately trying to turn them all against each other. And saying, hey, can I get support into here, or can I support you into here? They're not negotiating to form like a big alliance with their neighbours. They're talking to everyone one-on-one to try and get someone to attack someone else. And I look at that, and I'm like, well, that is a place that is going to fall immediately if we just throw like an actual coordinated alliance at them, right? Because Oxford was immediately buying into that. They were starting to talk to Edinburgh. I don't remember exactly how it went down, but I think before the builds were even through, Edinburgh changed their allegiance like twice on this island. It's just like, okay, well, I think there's some potential for me to gain supply centers there, because that is not a force that can try and repel an incoming invasion, and also it's the kind of atmosphere that might even invite an invading army in, right? Or an invading fleet in if you're helping against someone that they're opposed to. So that was why I was kind of okay building a fleet. And also, yeah, of course, I'd agreed it with Paris. But I don't think I would have agreed it with Paris had that not been the case in the north. I'm just realizing how much we have to talk through on this front. Is there anything more you want to mention for builds on the Viking front? Because
absolutely. We haven't even talked about the Viking builds yet.
Yeah, before the builds come through, right? There's a bit more I need to talk about with the wheel and with salt, but like, let's go back to your area first.
Alright, so, can we zoom out again so we can see the whole of the Vikings again? Because we need to, see Reykjavik and Dublin as well, because they are part of this.
Yes.
So, as CaptainMeme was talking about the British being seemingly chaotic and working against each other, they were a prime target for easy Viking expansion, given that we have Reykjavik and Dublin over there. So I'm looking at this and I'm seeing Edinburgh coordinate people against the rest of the Vikings. So I'm immediately saying, all right, Reykjavik and Dublin, you two just build fleets. We're going to have you guys move into Iceland Basin and Irish Sea, and you guys are going to take something out of Edinburgh because Edinburgh can't survive. So whatever you got to do to get in there, do what you got to do. Great. So those guys are building fleets. Okay, don't have to worry about them. They're islands, so it also makes sense for them to build fleets. Now if we look at the main Viking core of Scandinavia, it's really important that Trondheim, Oslo, Gothenburg, and I all build fleets. Because Trondheim can't attack Oslo, Oslo can't attack Trondheim or me, I can't attack Oslo or Gothenburg, and Gothenburg can't attack me. So if all four of us build fleets, we can navigate the very tenuous early game position to grow and to be safe and not be particularly threatened. I still have to deal with Umia, but okay, that's only one person now, and that's probably manageable. So, as I'm responsible for dictating builds to everyone, I say Fleet Trondheim, Fleet Oslo, Fleet Gothenburg, Fleet Stockholm. For Umia and Helsingfors, as a meta player, I don't want the name competition for the Baltic Sea. I want to be the only one who has fleets that are anywhere near the Baltic Sea, Gulf of Bothnia. This whole area, I want to be my personal lake, so I want them to build armies. Plus, they have a good route to expand. We have Archangelsk as also a Viking member. It's not locked in to being a Viking member. They're like close to it. They're in the Viking Alliance, I know explicitly, but they've been talking to other people about it. They're not as 100% as everyone else that I've mentioned is 100% a Viking here. So, Umeå and Helsingfors, if they build armies, they can push on Novgorod and Narva potentially. Don't worry about the fact that a fleet in Helsingfors would be even better at pushing Narva because it could move into Gulf of Finland, but that's not a problem. Armies, and they're going to go take Novgorod early. As a meta strategy for me for this game, I am well aware of how powerful Finland, Umeå, not Finland, Umeå is going to be, and
Spoiler
I
alert.
I know that I need to keep him happy and on side. Um, he's going to be the most important person in the Vikings by far. And I need to ensure that the Viking alliance, that him working with me stays better than him stabbing me. And so if the Viking alliance is working in such a way that he gets builds, he will continue to be happy and things will work out. And I view the rest of the Vikings as accessories to maintaining this relationship.
There you go, all of you who are playing this game, you are Ezio's accessories.
Look, they have armies and they're gonna do what I want, and
I mean,
this was
it is true. They agreed to you to be the tactician, and they weren't giving input, if I recall correctly. They were just letting you do it.
Yeah, and to be fair, I still need them to be okay with it. So it needs them to be powerful, and the more units they have, the more influence they have over the board, and the more stuff they can do. So I want them to get stronger. I don't want them all to be stuck at one centers. I'd like seeing them grow. I want Finland to be the most important, and still at step one, I haven't solidified Finland at Umeå as the only relevant person because other people are still active here, and like Helsingfors is an active player and is important. We'll talk about how I feel about Hels later. And then like Oslo or Trondheim or Dublin or Iceland, like they could all be important players here. Iceland and Dublin are harder because they're so far away. Or it's Reykjavik, right? Not Iceland technically, but whatever.
Yeah.
Like they're still open for people to be good. I know that King of Prussia in Prussia is an important person to talk to as well, but is less relevant because he's not my literal neighbor. Finland, being my adjacent neighbor, has a special relationship because we need to not die, and we can't kill each other. So figuring that out was tough. But helping the other Vikings grow was useful, but ultimately, this is a game where I'm trying to win. So how do we manage it? I need to make them grow enough to keep them happy, make sure that the position is such that they are safe from stabs, generally speaking, and so all of these fleet builds do stuff like this, and then try to mitigate it. So that's how things go, but I need to keep people on board. And so those are the builds that I tell everyone to do. All fleets except for armies, Inumia, Hells, and Ark. Copenhagen as well. So we had some fun negotiations with Salt because in this game I am still playing. Like I know that Salt is a good player that I can work with because he's at war with Ghent, right?
Yeah.
Because they're hostile, so I want to work with Salt. Copenhagen is part of this like German spy part of the Viking alliance, and and we've negotiated a deal where Salt will support Copenhagen into Rostock in the spring, and then in the fall we'll support Kiel into Bremen. We just have that deal negotiated as like, hey, let's get things started. As a great way for things to go off. And so I say, all right, Copenhagen, you need to build an army for this, which is very convenient because a fleet, if it takes Rostock, can't support Kiel into Bremen. The army could. Added benefit for me, of course, if as an army in Copenhagen isn't a fleet that can move into the Baltic. So yes, please build an army.
Yep. I need
Um,
to add as well, I forgot, Kiel in this variant has a canal. I think that's quite ahistorical for this time period, but it's just for playability purposes, to make sure that the only way through here isn't just Skagerrak.
so the fleet from Kiel borders Copenhagen, right?
Yes, so the fleet in
Okay.
Kiel borders both Werden and Copenhagen, but you are correct in saying that Rostock needs to be an army to support anything into Bremen, because that's only a land border.
Yeah, because Kiel gets on the way of that coast border.
Yep. Sorry, you can carry on.
Yeah, so that's part of the negotiations that we have. And so here, right now, I'm really hoping that we could just work with Salt, but I'm well aware of the strategic implications of having Salt in the Alliance. Due to Salt's reputation, I think it would make other Alliance members feel worried about having Salt in the game, like in their Alliance. And part of the negotiations, even at this early stage in the game, people are calling out me as being a stabby player. I have no idea why. And
See dot
it's
take dot.
C dot take dot. It's the way to play. And they were chirping all the time. And they were just saying stuff constantly about how I can't be trusted, how the Vikings as an alliance can't be trusted because I'm a member, how we're just gonna be expansionists and try to conquer everyone. I mean, obviously that part, but that goes without saying. We're playing diplomacy. Like, what alliance doesn't try to conquer its neighbors in diplomacy? Well, the wheel, but we'll talk about the wheel later. Um, okay, so I know that if it were strategically, I wanted to incorporate Salt in the Vikings. I wanted to bring him in, but I couldn't. I didn't feel that I could bring him in officially into the Viking alliance. I also was uncomfortable trying to reach out too much to Salt directly because I was worried people would track it too much. I think this was a mistake. I think I should have talked more to Salt to be like, "Hey, I really want to work with you, even though I can't make you officially a Viking." But I didn't say that enough. And also, again, I'm not the one working with him. I'm telling Copenhagen to work with him. So who knows?
Yeah.
But yes. So
I do
point
think
is,
I
I was trying to
remember
make this happen. Yeah.
Narva specifically being one of the people who was calling you out on being C.take constantly.
Yep. Yes. Narva. Narva, the very powerful country that is adjacent to Helsingfors and the rest of the Vikings, who is not a Viking, is calling me out constantly. Yes, that is true. And he called people out like before builds even. He does it. She does it. She does it constantly. We'll talk about Narva later. We can't. Maybe we can, but we're not going to.
Righto.
No, Captain Meme, you had other stuff you want to talk about. I've talked about the core Vikings to the north. At this point, yes.
Yes, I need to talk about Kiel a bit more because you, as you're mentioning, you couldn't really bring Salt into the alliance because of the implications of doing that. The implications of doing that were because of what was going on my side of the board with him, right? Because we had this, like, basically a meme going. I think we both like each other, like, outside of the game. At least I like Salt, and it feels like a big joke. But during the game, it was just like, immediately as it started, because obviously, I think Amsterdam sent immediately the message, hey, let's work as this Benelux. Kiel just jumped into that conversation and said, you cannot trust Meme. He will stab you. He's a balance of power play. You need to eliminate him immediately. And I was just then going, no, Salt is the stabby guy. Hey, Bremen, hey, Rostock, have you considered attacking him? Copenhagen, you guys could take him out super easily. And we had like this shouting match, basically, that was just going on through all of our negotiations, where we were just trying to insist upon each other's neighbors killing each other, right? So I was trying to get people to kill him, he was trying to get people to kill me. I think I was relatively protected against that, because these players had seen Salt's play in the previous one, and I think because Imperial Diplomacy is told from my perspective, right? People are more inclined to side with me when they see it and say, hey, Salt is the stabby bastard here, and kind of give me a bit of a pass on what I was doing at the same time. So these guys were like, hey, no, I know who you are, you're Salt. You know, you're Salt from the famous Imperial Diplomacy video. I'm not listening to you, I'm siding with Meme here. And also, I think Utrecht at one point went, oh, yeah, that would be fun, killing the streamer right out of the bat. That sounds amazing. So, like, being a YouTuber kind of helped me a little bit at the start of this game as well. But we had this back and forth going on over the entire time, right? And that meant...
Honestly, Captain Meme, I had no idea that was happening. I had absolutely no clue.
Was that not the reason why you weren't bringing him into the Vikings?
No. The reasons that I stated were the high-level bits about I want to like Salt having a reputation of being a stabber will make other people uncomfortable to have him in the alliance.
Mm-hmm. That is fair
and
enough.
it will reduce the amount of global chirping about towards the Vikings, and if Salt is in there, I would expect even more chirping. Oh, which alliance are you going to trust? The alliance with Salt and Ezio in it, or the alliance with the fish? Like, who do you think is going to stab you from that alliance? And everyone was. I didn't think anyone would
the,
ever work with the Vikings, and I
the fish didn't
hope.
exist yet, but we'll get to that later. Carry on.
Anyways, point is, who are you going to trust here? Salt and Ezio in the same alliance, or anyone else on the board? With our reputations, I just knew it was never going to happen, and I maintained hope that Finland would be able to get more global cooperation with us. Umia, not Finland. He's not Finland.
Okay, so something I need to explain here. Once you get to 2 supply centers in this game, you are officially allowed to rename yourself to a historical nation that fits the area that you are on 2 supply centers in.
Yep.
So what Ezio is saying right now is a pretty heavy spoiler as to what might happen with Umia in the future, but he did at some point rename himself to Finland, which is why Ezio is constantly referring to him as Finland. It happens with some other countries. I'll generally try and stick to their starting name, but I might flip back and forth because, like, it really depends on what I knew them as at the time.
Yeah. Yes. The more time you spent with them as on their new name, the harder it is to remember their old one.
Yes.
Or spoilers.
Okay, so other things that happen right now. Super important thing, the wheel, right? This meme that happened early on in the game. And I realize we're quite deep into the recording now and still haven't moved past pre-builds, but this is really quite important.
Remember when I said 3 hours for the first 2 years, CaptainMeme?
I think it actually will be. Oh my god. Alright, so, the wheel. Initially, everyone in this wheel area goes, yeah, we're wheeling. Right? We'll be in this great alliance and we're gonna do the wheel thing where we're gonna all go in a circle. And the really great thing about the wheel meme is that it's kind of a forced thing. If enough people are around you are also memeing, right? If you refuse to wheel and everyone else around you wants to wheel, you are going to die. Because they will just say, oh, this guy isn't following the meme, we will go and kill him. Or we will go and kill them, we will support the other person in, and, you know, they'll get 2 supply centers and whatnot. You also are kind of locked in without an ability to stab other people to gain another supply center. Because say that Venice wants to take Rome, right, in the fall of this year. Actually, I guess it would be Trieste, because they'd have wheeled once already in the spring. But the player who's in Venice wants to go and stab for Rome, right? In doing so, they're not wheeling, so they're not taking the supply center that replaced their home center. So they're just going for a different supply center to the one they would have gotten anyway, and the other player in the wheel comes down and takes their supply center. So all they've managed to do is relocate to a different place to where they were going to relocate in the first place, and turn everyone in the wheel against them by breaking the meme. So these players go, yeah, we're going to go in a circle, and suddenly everyone there is forced to go in the circle, whether they want to play the game or not. And we see this immediately. I've been circling Freiburg a lot when I talk about someone who wanted to go against the wheel, because Freiburg was very insistent in having this wheel alliance, and then immediately was saying, you know, but we should be ready to go and move out and start attacking stuff afterwards, right? Guys, we're not going to meme for the whole thing. Surely we're going to, like, actually play the game. And, like, the other powers were... There was a bit of a debate on this front, right? Because there were a lot of people who liked the idea of the meme in here and say, hey, let's spend the entire 8 years just going around in a circle. And if enough people say that, then Freiburg, as much as they want to play the game, they're kind of forced not to. So, anyway, we have this wheel group, right? Freiburg isn't too happy about what's going on, but they don't really have any kind of leverage there. Strasbourg then messages them and says, hey, can I join this wheel alliance? Because, like, I'm basically part of Germany, and I love what you guys are doing. You know, and that sounds... It all sounds great to me. And the wheel, at least the big talkers in the wheel, all say, hey, yeah, that sounds good. And suddenly, they're a bit at odds with Benelux, right? Because Benelux, now including Paris, is planning to go to Dijon and then attack Strasbourg. We don't outright talk about attacking Strasbourg, but it's pretty clear that that's the intention on the next turn. And so Strasbourg then says, hey, I'll support whole Dijon to stop these guys getting in. And they go, wait, no, don't do that. That's we don't want you to do that. We want to take Dijon ourselves. And so then Luxembourg and Paris start trying to make this alliance with Strasbourg, and in doing so, they start talking to the wheel, and they start saying, hey, can we join this group too, so that Strasbourg doesn't stop us attacking things? And I don't remember who it was, but someone in the wheel, after this happened, I think it was probably Freiburg, sets up like a message with like a react button below it, because this was before Ezio cheated and got reacts banned from the game.
Talk about that later.
Yep. They set up a message with a react button saying, hey, anyone who wants to be part of a wheel alliance, click this button. And I was looking at that, and I was thinking, well, there are a lot of people in this alliance, but if I click that button, I'm gonna be telling my Benelux people that I don't really have them in mind first and foremost, right? It's joining an alliance with a group of people who are planning to just go in a circle forever, and so they're not going to be any use as allies. It's also then saying, hey, you know, my preference isn't being with the people who are directly next to me, it's just joining random alliances that have the option open to join them. So I did not click that button. And I think that was potentially the biggest mistake I made in this game. The people who did click that button, Strasbourg clicked the button, Luxembourg clicked the button, Paris clicked the button, Bremen, actually I think Bremen didn't, but Kiel, importantly, clicked that button, and immediately after he clicked that button, he starts going, hey wheel, we're at war with Benelux, because I'm now in the wheel, right? He said it with a bit more tact than that, but he was going, hey, this is our expansion path, we need to go this way, you need to help me.
Referring to the Wheel Alliance as we, and that's such a good play, right? It was so smart. Just, yeah, we're allies, obviously, duh. No one's gonna check the receipts. So that was absolutely genius, and it worked like a charm.
It was horrific. It worked horrifically well. I hated how well it worked. Like, these people who were in Benelux were totally against Salt, and I was fine with that. I was like, yeah, okay, I managed to basically win this pseudo-war of words that I'm having with Salt, because his neighbours are threatening to kill him, especially since he's offering to support Copenhagen down. I think Bremen briefly joins the Benelux alliance just to kill Kiel, or to say, hey, I'm willing to kill Kiel. Slight note here, Bremen was being played by a long-time viewer of the channel who actually made the bingo sheet that we talk about in the longest game of all time videos. So it was very cool to be able to play with them and actually ally with them for a little bit. But they were very anti-Kiel. Rostock was very anti-Kiel. See, you should have sided with them instead of Kiel. It would have been much better to
Kiel's
loyal.
adjacent to us. I don't know, man.
Yeah, fair enough. But like, I was thinking I was winning this war of words, and then Kiel jumps in and starts talking to the wheel like, hey, this is our expansion route, we need to go this way, you guys need to not wheel, you guys need to play the game, because otherwise I'm going to die and I'm part of your alliance, right? And Freiburg hooks onto this immediately and starts like using this to try and get these wheel people not to wheel. And I think it wasn't like as aggressively as Kiel was selling it. They were trying to basically say, hey, we can wheel in the spring, and then we need to do stuff in the fall. We need to, we can make sure that we've done the meme and got it out of the way, and then we need to help our people, right? We can't just hang Kiel out to dry here. He's gone to the extent of clicking a button to show that he's with us. That was not how they said it, but that was what it was. And the rest of the wheel kind of just conceded to that. They went, hey, yeah, this is our compromise, we'll do one wheel rotation, and then we'll start moving out. And I'm suddenly left looking like a little panicked, Like, is this really happening? Did Keel really just mobilize the wheel against us? That seems insane. How did he manage that? But, because it was mostly coming from Freiburg, I think there were a few very talkative people in the wheel, Freiburg, Nuremberg, like Trieste, who all agreed to it. I was like, okay, well, the rest of these people haven't outright agreed to this, and there were like some votes going on as to whether they would do it or not, and there was always some degree of no, we should still keep wheeling. It's like, okay, well, the fact is, if there are people who want to keep wheeling, this isn't an issue, because the moment these people try and walk out, the wheeling people will just take their dots behind them, right? So, even if they do try and get up to Benelux, it's still not a massive issue, because someone will probably stab in an alliance this big. So, I was content leaving it at that, but it was just a bit of a shock that Keel managed to get them to agree to come after us. That was definitely a downside of me having a kind of pseudo-grudge with someone from outside the game here. Oh my god. But yeah, that was the main thing that I need to talk about. I think that was basically everything that happened here. Some of that wheel stuff might actually have happened after the builds. I think it did, because I would have been much less likely to build a fleet if I knew that these guys were planning to come for us.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident they started discussing how long will they wheel after they did builds. But we don't have to talk about that next phase then, so that's good. Remember that stuff. It'll be relevant later.
Yes.
It's going to be relevant, I promise. The wheel is a flare.
I think there was one more thing I wanted to mention, which was that the world convoy at this point was still being planned, and this is despite your wanting these guys to work against Britain. I think at one point Ireland just says to you, hey, no, we can't do that because we've got to arrange this world convoy thing. But then the world convoy breaks down on the next turn for the reason that we've mentioned with Madrid.
Yes, so okay, that's fair. I don't tell Reykjavik and Dublin to attack Edinburgh. I'm 100% convinced this world convoy is never going to happen. But as tactician, I can't tell them that. So I have Reykjavik and Dublin. I tell them to build a fleet. I don't tell them to attack Edinburgh yet. Because I say we're not going to be the ones to break the convoy. That's going to happen somewhere in the Med. Because the Med is just too tense.
Yep.
So I'm confident that wasn't going to happen. So I say, you guys are going to do that. We'll be okay.
I think that's everything we need to talk about before builds. Are you agreed on that?
We should talk about the Commonwealth. That is Gdansk, Krakow, Warsaw, and Prussia. Basically, everyone in Poland. They do agree.
That's not Gdansk.
Oh, not Gdansk.
It's Brandenburg.
Yes,
Krakow.
It's Wilno. Wilno.
Oh, is it
Wilno, not Brandenburg. Wilno, not Brandenburg. Yep.
Okay.
Guaranteed.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yes.
I remember this. So it's Prussia, Warsaw, Krakow, and Wilno.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, they agree to work together, and Prussia is also a Viking, right?
Yes.
I remember this because Gdansk was like going, how the hell am I going to survive this? Sorry for all the Diplostrat sirens, by the way. They are a very common theme on this channel, as you'll know if you've watched a few videos. But yeah, Gdansk was going, hey, I need to get out of here somehow. Can we get into Krakow or get into, how on earth do I survive this thing? I don't remember what the negotiations there were like. I don't know, you might?
Prussia was working with Warsaw and Krakow to get support into Gdansk, and then I was hoping to get supported into Brandenburg afterwards.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Right.
Yep.
Shall we move ahead to builds then? Or was there anything else that you need?
I think we can see builds.
Okay. Here we go. It's the build phase. Oh my god. We are 1 hour 15 into this recording and we just revealed the first builds. I think that's a new record. It just goes to show how absolutely crazy this game was. Oh, God, there was something else I meant to talk about in the first phase, which was that the player for Azores over here was making a spreadsheet through the entire game of various things that were just fun data things to look at, right? And I've got that spreadsheet here. As you can see, it says 94 players. We had 81 to start. We had some replacements over the course of the game. Sent 138,000 messages over the course of this game. Absolutely ludicrous, right? And I did want to show some of these charts, but I have to save most of them to the end because there are a lot of spoilers in this.
Yes.
What I do want to show is this one, right? Which this shows we had 5 negotiation channels on the Discord, right? This shows the general activity of each of them through the game. And you'll notice here, these are the first few phases. It's absolutely insane. I don't think it has the exact number of messages on here. I think it had it in the data. But like, especially in Elm, these numbers are insane. Right? This is winter 1941, so this is pre-builds. They have 1,000 messages here. They have 1,000 messages in most of these, and then after the spring, 5,000 messages in Elm on the first day. Absolutely ludicrous. And this spawned a meme which was Elm Fire, which is basically whenever you see one of these spikes, this is Elm Hall just going completely insane and everyone talking to each other at once. This is basically the entire south side of the map, so everyone down here used Elm Hall. And people in the north would just throw any secret messages that they needed to send someone in Elm Hall during Elm Fire, because they would realize that that is the best way to get a message to someone without someone else seeing.
Yes.
Right.
All of those spikes that you notice, you might think it's inconsistent that Elm isn't that active most of the time. Those spikes are every build phase, or sorry, every movement phase.
Yeah,
okay?
pretty much.
It's a movement phase. Oh my god, Elm is on fire.
Mm-hmm.
Every time.
Yes. It was just absolutely incredible, the Elm stuff. And I am going to link this entire spreadsheet in the description, so if we don't get through to looking at all this stuff, because there is a lot of data in here, you can check it out yourself. You can also, if you want to check the press itself or the voids, you can join the Chaos server that's linked in the description. It is archived, so you will not be able to talk there, but you can read everything that was posted if you can be bothered scrolling through 138,000 messages.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to the map. This is what we had after build phase. Ezio, do you want to kick us off with whatever was happening in your region?
Well, what astounded me first was that everyone built what I told them to build. That's, like, not too surprising, because most of the builds make some sense. But Gothenburg and Oslo and Trond were the ones that I was most worried about not building fleets, and they all built fleets. How wonderful.
I do also note, these guys all build armies as well. Narva has built an army. You have no contest in this area, right? In this entire
Rostock
region.
is the closest one to...
Indeed.
Yeah, but Rostock has to go through the Sound to get to the Baltic Sea, and I've obviously, remember the negotiations we have with Kiel supporting Copenhagen into Rostock. I'm still thinking that's online at once builds come through, so I'm like thinking Rostock's gonna get cleaned up anyways, and I don't have to worry because Rostock can't reach Stockholm, so I might have the only fleet in the entire Baltic Sea area. This would be fantastic. I would be so happy about it. Yep, I'm feeling good right when builds come in. I'm really happy.
Yep. I think Spitsbergen is probably a part of your alliance by this point, right?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think Spitsbergen just come on. I think so. Because Spitsbergen joins the Vikings. No, I think they're not officially a Viking until the end of this year. But they do what I tell them to do, which is why they become a Viking.
I feel like I also remember negotiations with Bergen over telling them, hey, you need to flee to Britain because we're not letting you into our alliance because we're already too big, right?
We're already too big. We need to take Bergen, but if you work with us to take Eddie or to help us take Eddie, then we'll be okay. And you can survive and we can try to figure things out. Yes. These are negotiations for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I did also want to talk about here just what's going on in Britain. You may notice two of these players have built armies, which is very indicative of the region just being a complete mess, which it absolutely is. They are ready to fight internally. They do not care about the external factors that are happening, except to say basically, hey, will someone come and help me against these people who are going to kill me? At this point, I think Oxford and London have decided to kill Plymouth together, and Edinburgh is like, I will work with Plymouth or something, or I'll work against these guys. But towards the end of the phase, he then goes, or they then go, oh, actually, I'll go to Wales to make sure Plymouth gets blown up, and then be in Oxford and London's good graces. So these three end up working together, but like it is after a lot of negotiation in which they're all kind of threatening to attack each other. So this is going to be the case with Britain a lot, and I have not got enough notes to know what happens in Britain most turns. Like, this is just going to be a completely chaotic region that we are not going to be able to talk about most of the time.
What do you mean? I know what happens in Britain. I cared about Britain. I have Viking members to the west of Britain. The expansion path for many of these Vikings is into Britain.
Okay.
I care about Britain.
I know that you care about Britain. Did you know what their internal negotiations were through most of the game?
Yeah, they're all a giant cluster.
Yeah, this is exactly what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, it's accurate, because but even the people who are in Britain, following the twists and turns of everything, because they make deals, and let's talk about each phase as it goes by.
Alright,
okay?
Sure.
Because that's, I think, a better way to handle Britain, because Britain is a phase-by-phase kind of place.
Yeah.
So, Oxford agrees to work with London against Plymouth. Start of things, very easy. And Plymouth is trying to struggle for survival and makes deals, but you'll see who wins the negotiation front in that regard. Edinburgh also works really hard to negotiate a DMZ with Dublin in the Irish Sea. And this is a thing that happens. And I'm gonna skip to, like, at some point in this phase, we need to talk about Iberia. Yep.
Yes, we absolutely
scroll down to
do.
Madrid.
Okay, so we mentioned earlier, Madrid gets forced to build an army by the GM when they were planning to wave, right? And everyone around them builds fleets, so they would have gotten away with waving here. And they kind of make it a meme later in the game that they want to get all armies out of Iberia. Like, they want this to be a fleet-only region. But this breaks the world convoy idea completely. Because suddenly, all of these powers are going, wait, there's an army here. What are we gonna do? This is just gonna, like, Madrid has complete control over everything. I don't know what happens here from this point. I think it's just a complete cluster. They managed to figure something out, but the fact that they have to figure something out means that the world convoy isn't an option anymore. Like, the chaos here breaks everything, and so Reykjavik and Dublin are back to being happy to work with you against other things, right?
Again, it was so I did a good job in the diplomacy here. I didn't tell them to attack anyone until the world convoy was dead. Mm-hmm. I made very sure that the Vikings in Dublin, Reykjavik, and Spitz were ready and able to support the world convoy, which would have meant Dublin to Rockall, Iceland to Greenland Sea, and Spitsbergen to Barents or Kara Sea. So, like, that was the thing. But once that fell through, then I'm saying, all right, great. As expected, we can get Reykjavik into Iceland, Dublin into Irish Sea, and we'll be able to take over Eddie. I see Dublin and Eddie have worked together to make a DMZ in the Irish Sea. And I think this is just Dublin looking for an excuse to get into the Irish Sea, and I tell Dublin to go into the Irish Sea, and I think things are fine. And then Dublin tells me, no, absolutely not. I can't move into the Irish Sea. I have to move into Rockall, and I'm going to find a way to get into Plymouth. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense, but I don't have any control over Dublin, right? Over, like, Oslo or Gothenburg or even Umeå. If any of these countries try to balk at the orders I give them so early, like, as part of the Viking alliance, you agree to do what I tell you to do, and so if somebody doesn't, the threat of the other Vikings just eliminating them is too real. If Oslo or Gothenburg say, hey, I'm not going to do it, I'll say, all right, hey guys, we good with this? Because let's take their center now, let's eliminate them. I have no such threat over Dublin, so I just say, all right, sure, do your thing, I guess. That's moving into the Rockall Rise. Um, Whatever. Like, sure, go for it. Maybe you can make something happen in Plymouth because obviously there is some chaos going over there and there's internal attacks, and maybe you think you can work with Eddie to get supported into Plymouth. Although then I discover that the deal was that Dublin would be supporting Eddie into Plymouth from Wales, which again makes me question what on earth they were smoking, but yes, great. As for the other Vikings, tactically, seeing everyone's followed through, we don't have to go and eliminate anyone. So pretty much the initial thing that I outlined is going to be fine. So Umia to Kola, Hells to Karelia. I discover that Helsingfors has talked to Narva and is trying really hard to make Narva work with us as the Vikings. Not fully joining, and Narva continues to be snarky and talk smack about the Vikings and me about how they don't trust the Vikings, but how they feel pressured to work with us. And so she's like, no, I'm not going to move into Pskov and help you guys into Novgorod. I'm just going to hold because I'm scared about Helsingfors just walking into Narva. So no, I'm not going to make that move.
I
Um,
think that's kind of fair, to be honest, but I'll let you continue.
I trust Helsingfors at this point. I wouldn't expect Helsingfors to take Narva. Plus, if Helsingfors moves into Pskov and if Helsingfors takes Narva and Narva moves into Pskov, you've got some guesswork still to make things happen with Helsingfors.
That is
Like,
true, but Narva isn't officially a part of the Vikings, right? So if
Narva's
Narva
not.
moves out and Helsingfors gets into Narva, then you guys are just going to go, oh, hey, that's good. Let's arrange like a self bounce in Helsingfors, or have
Yeah, but
Finland
in
go. Sorry,
public
or have
press,
Umeå go to Helsingfors
yeah,
to kill them.
we definitely would have just had Narva support. Yeah, we would have
Yeah,
definitely had Narva
Cola.
support Kola into Helsingfors.
Yep. So
Yeah. So we would have done that probably, but Helsingfors is never moving into Narva. Just I
yes,
don't know. The read that I have of the player,
really
yeah.
important note here is these two are both Bumbles, right? So they this is the real
Yes.
Bumble, and this is another player who named themselves Bumble, and of course Bumble said they'd ally with people who put Bumble in their name. So I think this is why they're trying to work with Narva in the first place, even though they're not part of the Viking alliance.
Yes. I mean, part of the thing about the Vikings was we didn't try to say we were an exclusive alliance, right? We let Prussia be part of the Vikings and be part of the Commonwealth. We were hoping to let Copenhagen be part of the Vikings and be part of another alliance. We were hoping Wheel, but that's fine. We were willing to let Dublin be part of the Vikings, but also make their own separate negotiations. We were okay with that. We wanted people to take the initiative and just be willing to work with us. And, like, that was a thing that we were going to let happen. By giving people specific roles, Prussia was a strategist, and so Prussia was able to tell the Vikings to do things that ended up being beneficial to the Commonwealth for long-term cooperation. Like, there were ways to make these alliances work. We didn't say you had to only work with us. So it's okay for Helsingfors to be a bumble and make friends with Narva, even though Narva isn't a Viking. This is okay. But whatever. Fine, people didn't like that so much. So tactically, Umia was going to try to get Novgorod. They were going to get into Kola and Karelia, and hopefully Arkangels could support us. And Arkangels was again a Viking in name, and we'll see where they end up on this. Oslo and Gothenburg are going to coordinate to take Bergen, and for my as Stockholm, I'm sad about this. I would love for it to not be one of these two going to build, right? I would love for like Trondheim to be the one building from Bergen, but that doesn't happen. Like, because I want Oslo, right? If Oslo builds an army, they border Stockholm. That's a little sad. If they're not building, I could potentially do something fun if I get a build. But either way, Bergen is going to get captured, and it's going to be by Gothenburg or Oslo. The exact tactics, you're going to have Oslo support Gothenburg into Skag, and then Skag support Oslo into Bergen. Just make it pretty much guaranteed a simple walk-in, nothing, nothing fancy, nothing is going to go wrong with that. Trondheim can get out to the Norwegian Sea and can then move to like the North Sea or support Greenland Sea in the North Sea. I forget exactly what tactics we settle on for this phase because this was a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Spitsbergen to Greenland Sea. So that's the explicit tactics over here. You'll notice I don't talk about Copenhagen in these tactics. You remember that I talked about with this deal with Salt, where Copenhagen and Kiel would work to take Rostock, and then they'd coordinate to take Bremen. Well, that doesn't happen. So that specific deal kind of falls through. I forget exactly what caused Copenhagen/Kiel to back out of it. But the biggest thing that happens as part of this spring phase is that the wheel itself, the core wheel that we've talked about, as the wheel spins, makes allies with tons of their neighbors. So they already had Kiel that got kind of roped in, like, pre-builds-ish. But then Kiel decides to ally with Rostock and Bremen and Brandenburg to be part of the wheel, despite being out of it. I think Strasbourg, we'll talk about their neighbor in a second. I think Strasbourg joins the wheel, and Rome and Naples. Does Genoa even? I think Genoa also joins the wheel. I think Dijon joins the wheel. I think everyone in that clump, in that general area, except you should talk about Luxembourg. You should talk about Luxembourg now, and we'll talk about how the wheel impacts the Vikings thing.
All right, yeah, I was gonna say this is coming like into quite close to what was going on with me. Okay, so specifically with Italy, by the way, they were already forming like an Italian alliance between like Trieste and Venice and like Sicily and Sardinia. Oh my god, we need to talk about these army builds as well at some point, but we'll get to those in a second. So the wheel is very directly relevant to me. I think I'd forgotten, but I think Bremen actually did click the button in the first turn as well. But then was also going, I'm not working with Salt. Why do we have Salt in our alliance? They are, like, clearly not going to work with us properly. They're already intending to kill me, right? And so Bremen was also part of Benelux at this point. But looking at what's going on with the wheel, and the wheel going, hey, let's work with these people, let's work with these people, let's make an agreement to move out after the spring phase, after we're done wheeling. My neighbors in Benelux were going, wait, this is not good. They're like, Kiel is already trying to rally them to go this way. At this point, Kiel hasn't like outright convinced most of them to come this way, but that is like the big direction that is being pitched, because everywhere else they're making allies with people. I think they bring Sarajevo in. You know, they've already got Strasbourg on side. Dijon is not with the wheel. Dijon doesn't talk enough to like bring them in with the wheel. But Paris and Luxembourg are starting to like think, hey, this may be a bit dangerous. What's going on here? And of course, Paris and Luxembourg both hit the button, so they're both considered wheel members as well. But they're looking at what Kiel is saying, and they're going, wait. Kiel is basically saying the wheel is going to go to war with Benelux, and we are Benelux. So are we going to be kicked out of the wheel and just run over? This is really bad. And Paris is kind of fine to just look at the immediate future and go, okay, well, we'll take Dijon right now. We're aligned with Strasbourg because we've joined the wheel to make sure that we can take Dijon. Let's do that and go from there. Right? I think actually they hadn't agreed which of them was taking Dijon at this point, but it doesn't really matter. Luxembourg, on the other hand... So in the previous phase, Luxembourg had joined the wheel, right? They also then, when you were making the call for people to join the Vikings, they went, hey, I'd like to be in the Vikings as well. That would be a cool thing to add to my alliance collection. I was going, this is getting a little bit worrying. Like, Luxembourg is joining all these alliances. Look, joining the wheel is kind of reasonable because they had neighbors who were, they really needed to not help Dijon. But then just volunteering to join the Vikings as well made me very nervous about what was going on here. And then on this turn, Luxembourg, after seeing all of these neighbors that the wheel is aligning with, and seeing Kiel try and declare war against us on behalf of the wheel, Luxembourg adds all of the Benelux people and says, hey guys, if the wheel attacks us, I am out. I'm out of Benelux. I'm going to join the wheel and just attack you with them, right? This is, it's needed for my safety because you guys all built fleets and you can't defend us now. And I was like, well, you were fine with us building fleets on the previous turn, right? This is, the whole wheel threat is overblown. It's only really coming from Kiel and Freiburg, this like attacking Benelux thing. I don't think they're actually going to do it. And, like, most of them just want to wheel. And the fact that they're wheeling means you have plenty of time to get a position here. What are you doing? I should have said that. I should have argued with Lux and said, hey, I think you're safe. We should keep you on side. This is the ways that you can defend yourself and stuff. That is not what I actually said. What I actually said in chat was, okay, well, Dijon, do you want to join Benelux? And you and Paris can go against Luxembourg instead, right? Because I was already in my mind going, well, Luxembourg joined the wheel and then tried to join the Vikings. Are they really going to be with our alliance? They wanted support into Paris in the first turn. I don't think they're going to be a very good ally to us. And this is a bit of a problem when I say this, because Amsterdam and Utrecht are perfectly happy to back me up on this. They are also going, what the hell, Luxembourg, you agreed with us that we should build fleets. Why are you now saying that you're going to leave us because we built fleets? But Paris is like looking at the situation going, wait, but Dijon doesn't talk. Why are you committing me to working with Dijon? Like, I still need to work with Luxembourg here. There is no way I get away with this. And Paris is also quite angry at Luxembourg for what they said, but they're clearly quite intent on self-preservation, right? They're going to me, hey, I really don't think an alliance with Dijon is going to work. They don't talk. They might not support us in this situation. Even if they do, Strasbourg is working with the wheel. Am I supposed to cut off relationships with the wheel if Luxembourg is, like, aligned themselves with the wheel here? Am I going to war with the wheel now, even though I opted into the wheel? And they are just like, wait, this plan isn't going to work. What are you doing, Ghent? Why are you committing me to this? And this whole situation just then makes Lux go, oh, okay, well, I'm going to side with the wheel then. You just threatened to kill me. I'm not in Benelux anymore. Screw you guys. I am now gonna work with these guys. And he also goes to Paris, hey, Paris, these guys don't have your best interest in mind. I'm still gonna support you to Dijon. You can take that, just work with me and then come and kill Benelux afterwards and declare your love for the wheel. And I just look at that situation and I go, oh my god, I just made the biggest mistake I could possibly have made. I think I said last time not clicking the button was the biggest mistake. This is also a pretty big mistake, because Paris is going to take that deal every time, right? They're going to work with Luxembourg, because otherwise they're working with someone they can't really work with negotiation-wise against 7 people. Even if those 7 people are wheeling, potentially more than 7 if it's all of the wheel's allies. So then I go to Paris, oh, okay, actually, work with Lux here and we'll figure something out on the next turn, right? Because they're clearly going to do that anyway, and I figure, okay, if Lux supports them in, maybe they get an opportunity to stab, and maybe someone in the wheel stabs. I just go, okay, fine, work with Lux. And Paris goes, wait, are you sure? Because Lux is saying kill you, right? Lux is just going to everyone, hey, come this way, murder all these people who used to be my allies because Ghent called for my elimination. And I go, yeah, go with it. Stick with the wheel. Like, play for your own best interests here. Mainly because I'm thinking, hopefully this wheel thing will dissolve. They've got too many people in the same area. And Paris can then help us against Luxembourg once they have 2 units. Yeah, I think that's basically the important things of what happened this turn with the wheel. At the same point, I think that was when Bremen and Kiel and such all kind of made up together, because they saw that, hey, Bremen was initially part of Benelux, right? And they'd also clicked the wheel button. They see this whole thing disintegrating with Luxembourg saying, oh, I'm going to attack you, and me eventually saying, okay, Paris, work with Luxembourg. That's fine. We'll figure somewhere else to go, or like flee, or whatever. Bremen just goes, oh, nope, I am out, and then starts working with these guys. So, yeah, that is when I'm going to pass back on over to Ezio for how this impacted your alliance.
Yep. So, Madrid being forced to build an army and the convoy failing cascades all the way back up. We love it. So, with Kiel deciding to actually work with the wheel, and the wheel now encompassing all of the adjacent members there, I realize Copenhagen is pretty vulnerable and exposed. And if Kiel and Rostock work together to take out Copenhagen, that's not very good. And that's making progress against us. So I realize we probably can't make any explicit attacks on Rostock and Brandenburg and Bremen right here, right now. That probably isn't a thing that we can do. So Copenhagen, just stay alive and be neutral. It turns out this was the greatest thing that Copenhagen has ever heard, ever. Because Copenhagen apparently wants nothing more than to hold in Copenhagen forever. So Copenhagen says, great, I'd love to hold and not do anything. Wonderful. Okay, fine. Great. So, as the Vikings, I can just see tensions brewing with the wheel. I can just see very clearly that, like, where are we, the Vikings, going to grow? How is the wheel working with these people up in northern Germany on the coast right now? What are they doing? Like, this area seemed like natural expansion. I also didn't believe the wheel was going to spin. I assumed that Freiburg and, like, the rational members of the wheel were just going to say, hey, guys, we don't actually have to spin. It doesn't do anything for us. Let's just not spin. So I'm expecting to see the wheel mobilize immediately. Get into Hesse and Saxony and Silesia, just make progress. And like, okay, well, where does Nuremberg grow? Where does Prague grow, right? Let's look at Nuremberg now that Bremen and Brandenburg and Luxembourg and Strasbourg and Freiburg and Innsbruck and Prague are all part of the Vikings. What does Nuremberg do?
The wheel, not the Vikings, but yeah.
The wheel. This the alliance that Nuremberg is part of. How does it ever grow, right? Prague. Okay, well, Prague has to go against Krakow. That should be scary to the Commonwealth. Vienna has some options here. Where does Freiburg grow right now? Like, I don't know, Dijon probably, because Dijon's AFK. I don't know. Either way, turns out most of the wheel didn't actually care about growing.
Yeah, I was gonna say I disagree with your points about rational members of the wheel. I think the ones who wanted a meme were perfectly rational as well. Right? Because also, if they stick to the meme and these people try and leave, they have a perfect excuse for gaining the supply center next to them.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that if you advocate spinning, you are making yourself useless to everyone else as an ally. And you are gonna die, I think. Eventually, you're gonna die if you just spin. But again, we'll see. We'll see how this goes. So Vikings, the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth things are going well. They seem to be down to work with Gdansk, and because Gdansk is an army, it's not a fleet. It can't even retreat anywhere. So no worries about that. Everything's nice and clean. Since the World Convoy is down, the army Arkhangelsk is now free to help work with us against Novgorod and potentially support Hold Novgorod. We'll see how that pans out. The HBE, I think.
I don't think that falls
the holy...
yet, right? Is that not later? I feel like
it's a much more relevant alliance later. I think. Nah, I don't think it happens yet. I think we need to give it a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think next year we can start talking about the HBE.
Yeah, basically we have no idea what's going on down here right now. But at some point we'll have some idea, so we'll talk about that when we get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else in your region that you need to say there?
Just that Brandenburg is snarky.
Yes.
Not as snarky as Narva, but still snarky.
I remember Brandenburg being, like, possibly the number 2 person calling you out on being C.take. After Narva.
Yep.
That was kind of important.
What? What do you mean? Anything else you want to talk about, me, or can we talk about why that was important? Yes.
I need to...
Oh,
Oh,
Corsica!
no. Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
Corsica's critical. Corsica built an army, and the Vikings realized that we have ways to bring members into the alliance, but no ways to remove people from the alliance. And so Fluminator geniusly decides we need an impartial, unbiased auditor, because if someone close to the alliance or in the alliance can kick people out, then they would benefit by just saying, oh, I'm going to kick out my neighbors and then I'm going to eat them and I'm going to grow. So we need somebody who's non-biased to say who's in the Vikings and who's not. And Fluminator Umia decides that Corsica is the perfect auditor for this.
Yes, and
so,
Corsica
Corsica is now officially a Viking.
Corsica is really talkative. You wouldn't expect it from, like, I think Canary's building an army down here, barely talking to anyone. Basically went, okay, I'm gonna meme the rest of the match because I can't move now. But Corsica is talking to everyone. Like, they are a really active player. Sorry for another Diplostrat siren there. They are a really active player despite having this army build. So they are actually intending to, like, get convoyed off. They're trying to negotiate to make that happen. At the same time, they are the perfect choice for this because they are paying attention to everything that's going on, right? And they're really enthusiastic about documenting this stuff. So you guys inviting them into the alliance, I think it probably wasn't necessary for the Vikings, but it was certainly a really good move. Like, this worked really well in keeping these guys in line.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about anything else here?
I think we can actually go on to the next phase after only 45 minutes of talking.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there was... there's one more thing that concerns me here, which is there was some attempt to... I will then move on. There was some attempt to make a France alliance. It basically fell apart immediately because Dijon wasn't talking, Marseille was barely talking, and Nantes declared themselves independent of all alliances, which was amusing, but also kind of interesting. Nantes then said they really wanted to go to English Channel. They didn't say why. I was like, I'm not confident about that. I don't really want an enemy fleet here, right? Amsterdam asked for support out into Southern Bight, and I was like, okay, yeah. And then it seemed like no one else was going to Southern Bight, so I just went and bounced Nantes instead. So if we look at the... we've got a clean map here. We look at the next phase here. I bounce with Nantes in English Channel. But yeah, now we've got the next phase. Do you want to talk about what's going on here? You kind of already...
So, the first thing I was... here's what I was told people to do, and the thing that you'll find that's amazing is that everyone did what I told them to do. Everyone. The only person who didn't was Dublin not moving to Irish Sea, but I kind of said, okay, Dublin, do your thing, don't worry about it, because whatever, I couldn't really handle it. So fine, okay, going to Rockall. So everyone in the entire Viking Alliance did what I wanted them to do.
Yep.
It's amazing.
It is pretty incredible. Although not everything went your way, if I recall correctly here. Specifically, what's going on over here. Do you want to talk about that?
Okay, so Before I talk about that, I do want to say it was at this point I posted into my void, if I don't win this game, it's an embarrassment.
Because you have 7 people working for you, basically, or
Like
whatever.
11.
Uh,
Yes. I had
quite a
11
lot.
people do the things that I told them to do. So that was the thing that I posted into my void at this phase. Um, so remember that. Um, so as far as the the Commonwealth Viking intersection. So, you can see that right near the end of the phase, Krakow changed up what was happening with Gdansk. Because I think that Krakow saw that Brandenburg offered to support Gdansk into Krakow. And so in an attempt to counter it, Krakow was like, hey, if you guys double support me into Gdansk, we just crush it anyways, and don't worry about it. Obviously, King of Prussia didn't go along with this, and I don't even know if Warsaw was online to see it. And then, because then King of Prussia was like, hey, I'm going to take Gdansk, this is good for me. Um, but Brandenburg supports this, which is hostile to the Commonwealth, and Brandenburg is already someone who I found very annoying and very snarky. And so I think this is a great chance for me to get the Commonwealth on side by attacking Brandenburg. Which is a thing that I'll talk about how that affects the next turn going on. But I think you want to spend some time still talking about like just what actually happened on the board on this phase flip.
Yes, okay.
So,
There
yeah.
are a few very important things that happen. What is this? What the hell happened here? Um, so I don't know why. I think Rome just threw a troll support onto the wheel to say, hey, I support the meme that's going on here. And Vienna accidentally orders to Venice instead of ordering to Trieste, which means that they end up holding here instead of moving, which breaks the whole wheel rotation and ends up meaning that Trieste, this random troll support that gets thrown on, dislodges Venice accidentally, basically, and forces them to retreat. Which is just hilarious. This whole wheel thing, they all actually do try and go along with it, but because of an external factor and a misorder, it ends up screwing them up badly instead.
The wheel does not even spin once.
Yes. Unfortunately for me, after this happens, they all seem even more willing to just say, screw it, let's move out, we're not going to bother wheeling anymore. And Freiburg is a huge part of this. Freiburg is like the most vocal person on the wheel here. They were already going, I don't want to, basically, we want to be an alliance that runs things here, we don't want to just be a meme. And I think the wheel failing to rotate on the first time gives them even more legitimacy on that. They basically go, hey, we tried. Let's go play the game now. And people just kind of go along with it. And I was like, oh no, okay, that's not great on my front, but like, not everyone is outright saying that they'll go along with it. And I feel like if everyone is moving out on a full phase, which is what they're planning to do right now, surely there'll be a stab, right? There has to be a stab. If someone in here just saw that everyone is like moving outwards, you stab, you get your second dot, and then you start rolling the wheel. Sure, you have a lot of people against you, but it's like I feel like it's still a pretty decent stab to be making. And I expected someone to go for it. You can probably tell from the sound of my voice that that did not go very according to plan. Oh god. Yeah. Is there anything else to talk about here? I mean, there's tons to talk about. Is there anything specifically that you want to focus on?
As far as moves, jeez. In this spring phase, uh, yeah, I mean, I think this is a good time to talk a little bit about these island nations and why I don't think they're that safe. So let's look at Azores. That people were saying, oh, Azores is such a safe place, right? These island countries. Canary is so safe, right? Um, well, right now Azores has 2 people neighboring their home supply center. That's not particularly happy, I would say. Um, Lisbon made it up into Porto, so who knows what Iberian Current is going to do. Robots in Sea of Azores, who knows what that's going to do. Like, very scary. I don't know how to live. I honestly would be terrified as any of these countries. Um, if you look up at the north, right, Iceland, I gotta move up even a little more, right? You can see, hey, Spitsbergen, Norwegian seas can threaten Spitsbergen. That's a little scary. Reykjavik's got Greenland Sea and rock all rise. That's scary. Like, every island nation is a threat of dying this turn, except for Canaries, because Canaries built an army.
Basically, the fact that the islands have to move out of their home supply center to do anything is a bit of a pain in itself, right? It's made them more vulnerable. I think is the point.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Also, this random order that's happening here is Corsica saying, I really wanted the world convoy to happen, I'm gonna throw a random support for it. At some point, the GM gets tired of drawing these random invalid moves on the map, but for the moment, you're gonna see a fair few of them in the next few turns, because people keep doing stuff like this. But you can basically ignore them for the purposes of what's actually going on here. Yeah. In terms of what's happening with me, Amsterdam was expecting my support, but basically went, oh, it was smart to go to English Channel instead, because, like, you know, you've bounced Nantes out. That's a good thing. I would have... I think his plan right now was support me out to English Channel. But then we went, okay, well, Strasbourg is now in Hesse. We kind of need to defend this stuff, so myself and Utrecht just agreed to bounce over Amsterdam. And... it took a bit of time to get to that point, because for a while I was just thinking, I think I need to snipe Amsterdam here. Because Amsterdam is doing other stuff in England. I think they've managed to find someone who agreed to support them somewhere, or managed to try to make a negotiation with Bergen or something. I don't know what was going on. It's part of, like, the English cluster, and that was too complicated. But I was looking at the situation going, okay, well, if my plan is to get to Paris to attack Luxembourg, right, and I'm hoping that someone in the wheel stabs, I probably need to have an army to back them up. So my best play is just slipping into Amsterdam while Utrecht is bouncing Kiel out of Wadden again, and building an army. But then when this whole wheel thing went down and they all went, okay, well, you know, it kind of became a lot more apparent that a lot of them intended to move this way. I was just like, do I really want to have my impact on this game being kill an ally and then die to a huge horde of random people? I'm like, no, I don't want the game to go that way. I'm gonna stick with my Benelux friends. It was just the three of us, so we became Benny, because it's Benelux is Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg. And so I decided not to do that, so we arranged a bounce instead over Amsterdam, which I'm not sure was smart, but I think it ended up being the direction that I wanted to go with this game.
Your mistake was making it too clear that Utrecht was actually bouncing, then you should have left that more nebulous.
Yeah, this was a problem, right? Because I tried to throw that, I think in Elm chat or something. It was certainly in a chat that was moving, right? To get... to arrange the self-bounce with Utrecht. It was enough that Amsterdam didn't spot it, and on the next turn they went, wait, what the hell, did you guys both try and stab me? And we had to explain to them that no, it was arranged, right, to defend ourselves here. We just decided to arrange a bounce that meant neither of us could stab him. But Kiel saw that and was like, oh, well, then I can get one, right? Yeah, that was kind of painful. Yeah, God, there's so much going on in this game. It's so difficult to, like, form a coherent, this is what I'm gonna talk about right now thing. Is there anything else you want to talk about on the Viking front, or should we look at the rest of the map?
The moves that happened on the board this turn. Again, I want to talk about, like, what things we do for going into next turn.
Okay, let's have a quick look at some of the moves on the rest of the map, and then we'll move through to the clean map then. So, importantly, this was a stab. Lisbon into Porto. They were supposed to both go out to here, I think. And Lisbon just tricked Porto into moving so they can try and get these two. I don't really know what's happening with... They call themselves the Spain Alliance after the coalition. It was supposed to be all of them, but they kind of just whittle out members one by one, and you'll see that coming along as the next turn comes along. And these three powers are all aligned. They call themselves Morocco. And even though they moved to the Strait of Gibraltar, I think they align themselves with Spain. So those are the important things to note here. I don't really know what's going on over here at all. I think this group is moving... Like, this group of nations are all allied. And want to move and push out this way. Right? And then this group of nations is also all aligned, which is why these guys aligned in the first place, to push out this way. Yeah. Poor old Kiev gets pushed out of their home center here, which is a bit of a win for the Commonwealth, because Kiev was on Gdansk's side against them, and obviously trying to break things apart with this support. And I do notice Narva actually does move to Pskov.
Yeah, they arranged the bounce with Novgorod, I think.
Oh, right, okay. Right, so let's move to the blank map here, and you can... retreats. Okay, what retreats happen. You can see they go to various places. And then we have the clean map, and you can talk about what you were planning to do on this phase.
Alright. So, as Vikings, most of the plan has gone along very smoothly. And so we can stick to the plan in the east. With Kola working with that's Umia and Helsingfors coordinating with Archangels to take Novgorod. But you'll notice that Narva is still in Narva after bouncing in Pskov. And I don't trust Narva. I don't trust her as far as I can throw her. I trust her about as far as I can throw her, and I'm not even online. Like, I can't throw her at all, because we're not in person. That was a great analogy. Great. So, I don't trust Narva, and I don't want to see Narva stab Helsingfors. And based on what I've read in the press, Narva is gonna go for a stab. 100%. I'm pretty good at reading these sorts of things. You can tell when someone is gonna stab someone else. Narva is gonna stab Helsingfors. So, I go to Helsingfors, and I'm debating trying to go for a stab of Helsingfors myself. I realize it would be a really bad look if I try to stab Helsingfors and I bounce with Narva out of Helsingfors.
Yeah.
That would not be good. Really, really bad. I betrayed the Vikings, everyone's pissed at me, and I don't get a build. And, I can say, yeah, I knew Narva was going to stab, but Narva says the same thing about me, not going to happen. So, I say, alright, fine. I will tell Helsingfors to bounce me out of Helsingfors. But, tactically, so, if we look at Novgorod, which we're trying to take right now, if Helsingfors with Karelia bounces with me in Helsingfors and only Arkhangelsk supports Kola into Novgorod, then if Moscow holds Novgorod, then Novgorod doesn't get captured. Notably, there was a turtle alliance that was proposed. If you notice, Moscow has a turtle on its thing. It's a very cute turtle. Novgorod is part of this, because they just want to stay alive in the threats of Viking aggression. So, I worry that Moscow is tempted to support Hold Novgorod. But, if Moscow is convinced that it's going to be 3-on-2 anyways, then Moscow might not support Hold Novgorod. Notably, we want Umia Kola to be the one to take Novgorod, because, yeah, I want Finland to grow here. So, I'm thinking, alright, great. I don't want everyone to see that I'm going to be bouncing with Helsingfors. Plus, I think it would be really poetic if Narva misses that I'm bouncing. I don't think that's going to happen. But wouldn't it be great if they miss it, and then we bounce, and then we keep Narva out of Helsingfors? That would be amazing. I'd love that. So, I try to be sneaky about how I tell Helsingfors to bounce. And that we have some messages. And on Discord, there are reactions that you can use to spell out letters. And you can use these to send a message where I spelled out BOUNCE to bounce to Helsingfors. And then Helsingfors was online. Helsingfors says aye, and then I remove the reactions. And this is technically legal because there's no rules about using reaction. I think it breaks the spirit of public press. And I realize this as I'm thinking about it, in that they have rules about editing messages that you're not supposed to do it, and rules about deleting messages which you're not supposed to be able to do. Reactions are okay, but using a reaction to spell out a message is kind of lame. So I tell the GM, hey, this is a thing that I did, and I think this should be against the rules in the future.
Yep.
So the GM says, yeah, that makes sense. So we're going to ban this in the future.
And you got reactions banned for everyone, which I think everyone was annoyed about because people loved reacting to things.
Reactions were great. I was perfectly content to let people just say, hey, you can't use reactions to send messages to communicate about the game board.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's fine. And on a game like this, we have to trust people anyways. Like, if people want to privately message each other, they just can, right? Discord's not stopping that. So we have to trust people in games like this anyways. So I think it would have been fine if they just made a rule to say, hey, you can't do this, and we have to trust people. But whatever. The GM decided to just remove reactions altogether, and that was the biggest though.
Yep. And amusingly, at the same time, I think I remember you saying, hey, I spelled out bounce. Like, you said that in public as well, as to why the reason that this was gone, because, like, that is now against the rules. You may as well, like, it's kind of good sportsmanship to say what you did to get the rule.
Right, because
it's Jesus.
Yeah, and it was like, I felt bad because I wouldn't want there to actually be the secret message, right? I think that just breaks public press, and so I wanted it to be very clear, like, hey, I sent this message that was legal, but was probably what should probably not have happened, and now that it's illegal, I don't want to have a huge advantage because I did a thing that is now against the rules that now nobody else sees and knows about.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, all right, this is what happened, so yeah, everyone knows and sees.
Yes. And that should include Helsingfors, and they said aye, right?
They replied aye after seeing me say bounce.
Mm-hmm.
Then, a little later, Helsingfors sends a message to me that's like, hey, this is a me move, right? It doesn't affect anyone else. And I was like, yes, it's your center. And you're bouncing with me, but like, I realized at this moment exactly that Helsingfors thinks I told them to bounce Narva out of Helsingfors, not bounce me out of Helsingfors.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And so Helsingfors, I think, is like, oh, I trust Narva isn't going to go after Helsingfors, and so I can trust them to not do it, so they're not going to cover Helsingfors. I have a suspicion this is what happened, but I don't clear it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
why would I?
Right?
Yeah, why would I clear this up? This is the best possible. I want to take the center, and I don't want to be stabbing someone. I told them to bounce me, and it's not my fault if they don't bounce me. They said they were going to bounce. Like, what do you want from me?
Oh, God. Amusingly, this is the first time I'm hearing the honest version of Ezio's events.
Oh, yeah.
I think will be the case.
I'm saying a completely different case. No, I'm pretty confident before this face flips that Helsingfors is not going to bounce me out of Hels.
Yeah, they are supporting Kola into Novgorod, right?
Worth noting, because I need to vindicate myself here to everyone, Narva was gonna stab Helsingfors until I organized the bounce. Just, that move was in. They were going to do it, and it was only once I said, hey, let's bounce, that Narva changed their mind. So, I was completely right about the threat and about the concerns, and all of you guys saying that I was just stabbing for the sake of stabbing are full of it. Because Narva taking Hels is worst case, right? Because Narva's not part of the Vikings, Hels is, and we don't like Narva, we can't trust Narva. None of this thing is good. That move was changed. Narva was like, I can't believe they're bouncing. Stupid Stockholm. Annoying. That's a thing in their void. So, all right, I was right. We needed to bounce, or else Hulz was gonna die.
Alright, but as viewers may have noticed from, well, I mean, you've picked it up from what Ezio was saying there, the end result is that Baltic Sea has a move to Helsingfors in, which is completely legitimate and wanting to bounce, when the unit is bouncing is doing something else entirely.
So, again, Hells never confirms they're not bouncing. Hells never says, I'm not bouncing or anything. Their last thing was a, hey, I just want to make sure this is only a me thing. Right? And so it's pretty clear what that is. But they're not saying, all right, I'm not going to, right? They're leaving it ambiguous, and that ambiguity is where we survive.
Yep, okay.
Plausible deniability.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Hold up. Sorry. No, this is we skipped a bit. We skipped a bit. Because I don't want to take Helsingfors yet. That's not my priority yet. If you'll notice, if you look at the Baltic Sea and the possible centers that I border Helsingfors, Stockholm my own, Gdansk, and Brandenburg. Gdansk and Helsingfors are both held by Vikings, so they are not my priority. I want to take Brandenburg. Sorry guys, the Helsingfors thing, we skipped a bit. We skipped way ahead. So, Brandenburg. I don't like Brandenburg. Brandenburg is a very snarky player, very annoying player, and they worked against
I
the
should
Commonwealth.
say I liked Brandenburg. I was cheering them on with everything they said because they kept saying that you would see dot take dot. This is what
They
you're
were saying
calling
stuff
snarky.
like that. They were saying anti-stuff about the Vikings, and they were like anti-Viking press, and then they worked against the Commonwealth, who, right now, I think the Vikings and the Commonwealth are best of friends. We have Prussia, who's here with the coastal provinces and the Commonwealth, which means that I'm not going to attack the Commonwealth, and the Vikings aren't going to attack them because they're part of the Vikings already. And then the Commonwealth can work with us to conquer other coastal provinces, be inland, be nice and safe, and things work out. So I think that by Brandenburg declaring war on the Commonwealth by working with Gdansk against Krakow gives me a great excuse to attack Brandenburg. But the wheel has annexed Brandenburg as part of the wheel in the pre-phase thing. So I don't really want to get into a big wheel war because of how exposed Copenhagen is. And if it's clear that we actually go into a straight war with the wheel adjacent allies plus the wheel against us, Copenhagen's going to fall. And Copenhagen is this nice little buffer zone that I have, and I want to keep that buffer zone. So I need to keep things okay there. So I go to the wheel and I ask them, hey, can you guys kick Brandenburg out of the wheel adjacent alliance structure thing and let us kill them? Because they were annoying to me. And they're not even really a wheel. And I made this whole case about it where, like, everything was chaotic at this point. So the wheel makes a bunch of polls and stuff where they like ask people about their opinions on stuff, about where are they attacking, how much should they spin or whatever. And Brandenburg gets left out of all of these questions and conversations. No one they don't really recognize Brandenburg's part of the wheel. Like Kiel was more of a part of the wheel than Brandenburg, and Brandenburg's closer even. So I'm like, look, they're not really part of a wheel. They've said a bunch of stuff. You don't want to really go to war with the Commonwealth, and like Brandenburg just attack the Commonwealth. Just let us kill them. It's fine. Um, and so I make like this big wall post where technically I'm a tactician, I'm not a strategist or the diplomat, so I can't actually propose anything officially. But I sent this whole thing out and I said, hey, wheel members, you should read this because if it makes it out of committee and the Vikings all agree on it, then we'll be okay. But the actual negotiations at this point were up to Umia, and I think Dublin was our actual official negotiator, but Dublin has his own stuff that he's working on. But I send this out. If it gets approved, then the wheel can look at it, and then the wheel can officially agree to it. But before then, it's not binding at all. So it's this perfect level of relevant, useful things that we can back out on, and hopefully tensions don't escalate. Which is a really important place to find in these sort of public press games. So that way you can say things but not be tied to them if you need to retract later.
Mm-hmm.
I propose this. The wheel goes through 1 billion votes because the wheel, unlike the Vikings, are a democracy. And they all have to vote on everything that they say and all of their agreements. And so Freiburg really doesn't want to go to war with the Vikings because Freiburg, for whatever reason, feels like it's just not going to go too well for them. I don't really see it, honestly. I think a war with the Vikings goes okay for them, especially if they get the Commonwealth on side. But Freiburg doesn't want that for reasons. And so they go through a couple of votes where basically everyone in the wheel just votes for war with the Vikings. They just say, nah, tell the Vikings to F off. Vandenberg's a wheel. Let's do this. Um, but through attrition and through a series of votes where one of them gets to a neutral thing where, okay, we're not going to attack the Vikings, we're not going to go to war with them, and we're going to let Bremen eat Brandenburg because, fine, the player of Brandenburg is annoying and we don't like that they attacked the Commonwealth. To appease both of you guys, we will kick the player out of the alliance and we will let our own internal members eat Brandenburg. This was like the third or fourth vote that they got to this phase. And this one finally squeaked by, I'm pretty sure because the people who didn't want to do this just stopped being online and got sick of posting, no, this is absurd. Bremen was on board with it because Bremen got Brandenburg out of this deal, which I hope they noticed and stuff. But yeah, anyways, that was a huge part of the diplomacy of this phase in particular, was what's going on with Brandenburg. Right? Obviously, I just want to take it, right? This whole thing was just because I wanted to get the dot, and I need an excuse to take the Brandenburg dot, right? Like, that's it.
Yep.
And, like, I don't know. I'll say whatever I can. And, I don't know. I thought there was a good chance that they would just say no, declare war on us, and then we can negotiate with the Commonwealth to try to make things happen here, and then be okay with it. Like, that's what I was expecting to happen as a result of this, was just might make an inflammatory enough comment that gets people to go to war. But Freiburg really didn't want that to go to war, so instead they just ate Brandenburg, which I was content with. Brandenburg was a snarky player. Get him out of here. Less chirping about me. Um, Other relevant chirpers in the game, Narva we've already talked about. Luxembourg does a lot of this stuff. And I just,
Yep.
yeah. And then Krakow, a member of the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
These players were on my hit list. If I could get them eliminated, I would.
Oh, this is sorry. Yeah.
Yes, Krakow. Yeah, Nakatansk and Krakow. But Krakow's a member of the Commonwealth. I kind of want to work with the Commonwealth. Prussia's there, so I really can't say anything about Krakow. Luxembourg is just too far away. I have no influence on them. I can't do anything. So,
Yep.
whatever. And then Narva, of course, is Viking adjacent, and we'll see how things work out with her.
You were mentioning this is the phase that all the votes happened, right?
Well, yeah.
I feel like that was pretty relevant to me, but I thought it happened next year. Maybe there were more votes
this
next
year.
year.
There were votes this year. Oh yeah, the wheel as an alliance, the way that it handled all of its decisions was by creating a vote.
Yes.
That was how the alliance worked. Period. To do anything, which makes people feel like they have input. And I mean, I don't like the way that structure generally works out. I think it requires everyone to be online constantly to be able to put in to vote for their inputs. Like if you miss a vote, you just don't get to say anything. It means that a couple people can just say some things and be convincing to make the whole alliance do things that's only in their interest. Man, how awful would that be? As opposed to Vikings, where I could just tell everyone what to do to be in my interest.
Yeah.
But again, like, even though I did things that were in my interest, I had to DB things that were helping individual members still. Like, Oslo is getting a build from Bergen here and being happy about it. Umia is getting a build and being happy about it. All of the other Vikings, if you look at the Vikings right now, really nobody can stab each other. Well, I can stab Helsingfors, which is, I mean, maybe a thing, but don't worry about it. But like Oslo is actually safe here, right? Despite the chaotic start, right? Stockholm is actually safe. Gothenburg is actually safe. Trondheim, safe. All of these countries that in everywhere else on the board, people are at risk of dying, right? Everyone else, if you look at the, like, again, there's going to be a couple of others. Like I think Dublin, a Viking, is safe.
They're not
like,
even, but yeah.
Oh, they're not even. Yeah. But anyways, right? It's like, well, I mean, if they're not going to attack, but yeah. So the point is like, it gives everyone in the Vikings so much safety because we are trying to make it difficult to stab here. And that's a really beneficial thing for everyone. And I am confident that if people in the Vikings push to make deals happen with other hostiles, they can make good gains for themselves here. Maybe foreshadowing a little bit. Like Prussia, for example. Because Prussia was able to make a deal with people in the Commonwealth, they were able to get Gdansk, but also be safe from me. So, very useful.
Yep.
Okay.
I
Other tactics real quick to just go through the Vikings for a second.
go for it.
So here we have Bergen going into Edinburgh. And Bergen's not necessarily a Viking, but is adjacent. So here is where Dublin is saying, hey, I want to work with Edinburgh, and we can't get Bergen to not take Eddie because Bergen's going to die. So we need somebody to save Eddie. And theoretically, Dublin is going to support Wales into Plymouth, and therefore we then need Iceland Basin to bounce Eddie, to bounce in Eddie, so that Bergen doesn't take Eddie. And this way, like, okay, well, I guess be including Edinburgh in the Viking Alliance. That's fine, I guess, because we're giving them a dot. I'm just like, why bother? Just let Bergen take Eddie. Like, it's fine. But whatever. I didn't do enough. And then we agree to have somebody gets supported into the North Sea. I forget who. Maybe Trondheim. Either Norwegian Sea or Greenland Sea gets supported into the North Sea. I agree. One of the two of them gets supported in there. I forget exactly which, because it feels so symmetrical to me.
Yeah.
I probably have Norwegian Sea. I think Greenland Sea is more useful, but
Aye.
plus that keeps Spitsbergen safe. I forget one of the two. They're interchangeable.
Yeah, so basically the plan changes from let Bergen into Edinburgh despite them not being part of the Vikings to let Edinburgh keep Edinburgh despite them also not being part of the Vikings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the decision that, like, Dublin pushes for, and I really don't want to be too tyrannical because I'm feeling like things are too good to be true already. Because I want to say no. Bergen wants to be a Viking. Bergen has posted trying to be a Viking multiple times, but because they were late, they missed it. And so I want to just say, hey, don't do that. Iceland Basin, go save yourself. North Sea, go to Eddie. Call it a day. But I don't want to be too tyrannical, so I say, hey, look, people in the Viking Alliance are taking initiative. Great, this could be awesome. If Eddie works with us, then we could probably clean up Oxford and London in a phase or two, and England, it gets all cleared up, and we're crushing. So, great, let's do that. Fine. Acceptable. Go do your thing, Western Vikings. Have a good time.
Yes.
Okay. Those are the tactics I tell everyone to do.
Yeah, I think an important part of this as well is that Ireland offers the support for Wales to Plymouth, right? And they talk to Amsterdam a bit and say, hey, can you go Southern Bight to London? Because then one of these two things falls, right? Even if Oxford supports hold Plymouth, Amsterdam then gets into London. So it ends up taking down this Oxford-London alliance a little bit. I think Oxford is like that. These guys are talking about other things in the middle of this as well. As mentioned, Britain is tough to track, but that's how things end up working out there. And
I'm going to talk about it again right before the phase flips because things change.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, as I was mentioning, the votes that are going on over here, right? I have just looked through my void, which is my confessional, kind of, for what happened this phase, and the important vote does still happen next year, for me. But this one, I was very much arguing that, hey, Freiburg is just repeatedly making these votes until he gets a result that he likes, right? Because that was blatantly what was happening. They were putting up a vote to say, hey, we're not going to be at war with the Vikings, right? Or they were slightly altering the conditions every time they lost the vote to justify putting up another vote. And from my perspective, I think at this point I was arguing saying, hey, Wheel, if you go to war with the Vikings, you're going to need Benelux on side. Well, Benny now. Because we have fleets, and you only have these two fleets. You can't attack the Vikings with anything else that you have, right? So I was desperately wanting the war with the Vikings to win this Wheel vote. And I was just seeing Freiburg manipulate these votes and going, how is he being allowed to get away with this? This is insane. But no one was siding with me when I called him out on it. Mainly because he was, like, in their alliance and I was not, right? So there was no one so abjectly against what Freiburg was wanting here as I was, because it didn't actively harm any of these people if they stay at peace with the Vikings, right? It's just... It harms me because then they come for me, but I'm not in their alliance, so it's whatever. So Freiburg just got away with it, and there was nothing I could do, and it was so painful just watching vote after vote after vote after vote get proposed, and then eventually he wins one, and suddenly that's the one that they go with. I hated that so much, but there was nothing I could do.
Yeah, the votes were all subtly different as far as, like, okay, do we just let the Vikings and Commonwealth take Brandenburg? Do we kick Brandenburg out? Do we make peace with the Vikings? Do we make peace with the Vikings but position to attack them next year? That was what I think they finally voted on, which I thought was hilarious. Like, you can't be at peace with someone if you say you're attacking them. But whatever.
Yeah, it was just like, it was so blatantly just getting what Freiburg wanted. Like, just rephrasing it until it passed the vote. Yeah.
Yep.
Is there anything else you want to talk about here before we progress? Because I think I mentioned, like, Amsterdam initially wanted to support me out to English Channel. I really did not want to go to English Channel this turn, because I knew Nantes was going elsewhere. I think they said to Iberian. And so I was like, well, I don't really want to leave my HSC, and I also am looking at Amsterdam as a potential take until we arrange the self-bounce. So I arranged the self-bounce instead over Amsterdam, and Amsterdam found their own thing to do in going to London. Yeah. I think that's everything then. Shall we go ahead?
Yes, sure, we can go ahead. And we can talk about... Yeah, sure, let's go ahead.
Okay, so moves here. Where do you want to focus on first? I think there is one specific move I would like to focus on. What we've already talked about.
Look, that's the good one, alright? That's the good shit, right? Just walking into a center unopposed, 3 units next to that center, none of them walked in, just let me do it. Oh, that's so great. Oh, you'll love to see it.
There is another important move that's happening over here as well.
Yeah, you don't love to see that.
Which one do you want to talk about properly first?
Oh! Oops, I forgot about... Yes, I did change up tactics like this. Yeah,
this
okay.
one specifically.
So, remember how I was talking about how the Wheel's vote was we're going to make peace with the Vikings and we'll make moves to attack them, like we'll position ourselves to attack them next year, right? That was the vote the Wheel said. Well, I'm looking at that and I'm like, oh, Copenhagen's a threat. I don't want them to be able to get into Jutland. Jutland is like a critical province in our borders here for this war. Helps us put pressure on Kiel, helps us defend Copenhagen, doesn't let their armies fight. We need to be in Copenhagen, so Skagerrak needs to take Jutland. So Norwegian Sea should support Oslo and Bergen instead. We don't take North Sea like that. That's right. Good call past me. Smart. Good thinking.
Yes, so you end up doing this instead. But then this is like the big thing. You promise the bounce with... Well, you ask for the bounce with Helsingfors. You realise Helsingfors isn't going to go for the bounce, and then you go in anyway. And then on the next turn, everyone's like, oh, haha, that's so Ezio. It's C. Take. And you are going, how dare you accuse me of doing such a thing?
It's absolutely not C. Take. I told Helsingfors to stab. I was being an honest, true, good Viking. Yeah, I told him to bounce.
But you were so offended this phase when everyone called you out on your...
Oh, I was not at all offended, but I had to pretend to be offended. You gotta get into the mental space. And if I was actually honest about this move, I would have been offended. So I had to be offended.
I see. Amazing. But yeah, so you end up going up to 2.
I get up to 2.
Completely not from a stab. And actually, in the audit, which Corsica does at the end of this turn, you get an orange, which is you're on notice, but you're not kicked out of the Vikings. which
We have a whole-on tribunal about this, which we should talk about. But basically, I get saved because Ireland does a bigger stab. If you look at the map here, you see Rockall Reykjavik. That's what a stab looks like, right? Everyone's like, oh, hey, there was just clearly he wasn't doing anything agreed upon or anything, right? He just clearly went and stabbed and, like, manipulated the Western Vikings so that he could take a dot. And it's like, okay, sure, whatever. You do you. Fine. Get out of the Vikings. Look at him stabbing. Brutal stab. Okay. F off.
Yeah. I think so I do want to mention this as well. Ireland pulls a huge amount more attention to their stab than they even would have gotten otherwise, because they make a YouTube video called Why I Had to Stab Iceland. And it's incredible and also a bit over the top, and like everyone loves it, but also everyone is then notified that, hey, this has happened. It becomes like a big factor on the map. I am going to highly recommend that video. I will link it in the description below. It's hilarious. But it pulls so much attention away from what happened over here. It's amazing.
Well, it pulls a lot of attention, and it's like clear, hey, there's a worse stab that just happened in the Vikings. But we have a tribunal over here over with me. So Finland's like, all right, look, we need to talk about what happened over here with Stockholm. And turns out Finland just doesn't want to kick me out of the Vikings, right? And Umia, and doesn't want to kick me out of the Vikings, right? The creator of the Vikings doesn't want me out, because you'll notice I'm going to be building in Stockholm, and if I am in Stockholm and Helsingfors and the Vikings kick me out, what center can they coordinate on? I wonder. It's Umia. And so Umia recognizes that if Umia tries to kick me out, they would probably successfully kick me out of the Vikings, but that would make their game hell for a while. Because obviously I'm not going to go down without a fight. I'm just not going to go quietly into the night. I would cause a ruckish. Umia's game would be kind of cooked. Like, with all of the fleets that we have, it's remarkably difficult for the Vikings to actually pressure me in Stockholm. We could have a build in Oslo for an army to help, and Umia is building, but it's not a good enough advantage with Karelia disbanding to actually, like, crush me. So Finland really doesn't want me to get kicked out. So Finland is like, all right, we'll hold the tribunal, and I think Finland is just confident I can weasel my way out if Finland doesn't push. So, yeah.
Yep.
Finland's like, all right, we'll have a tribunal, and then we'll hear what they have to say. Now, in the tribunal, my biggest defender is Helsingfors.
Yeah, it should be noted people don't get shut up in the chat until they've disbanded their last unit. Then they become spectators. Yep. So, yeah, Helsingfors was still able to contribute.
And so Helsingfors is like, oh, actually, yeah, Ezio totally told me to bounce, and I didn't. It wasn't a stab. Hells just says that. And look, I did tell him to bounce. Right? I do maintain that. It's just that I realized he wasn't going to do the thing that I said, and, like, I didn't change my orders despite my realization, but I told him to bounce me. Like, there is that remains true. And so, yeah, he says, no, like, Ezio didn't stab me here, which is great. And that's basically it. Like, that gets everyone else to be like, I guess, like, it's Helsingfors center, right? Nobody else is going to get dots from me. They're like, all right, some people are saying we need to get Ezio back down to one center, and I really, really, really don't want this to happen, because going down to one center is not very good. But I do agree to give up Helsingfors. I don't think I should have that dot. I think that dot is going to create tons of tension between me and Umia. I want Umia to have it. So I say, all right, look, I agree. I should lose this dot. Umia should take Helsingfors. Good news, they're building an army in Umia. They can move that to take Helsingfors, get away from Stockholm, keeps me safe, and then things will work out and things will be fine. And this is the compromise that we make that gets everybody on board with, like, me being part of the Vikings, but also losing the dot that I got by maybe stabbing a member of the Viking.
But probably picking up another dot in return, right?
hey, we haven't talked about this at all yet.
Right.
Well, not quite yet, but yes.
Narva,
meanwhile, is oh god, yes, because Narva meanwhile is saying, oh my god, Ezio's the biggest stabber ever. I need to cover Narva because he's gonna come for me next. This is the biggest end of the world. How could you guys possibly let Ezio still stay in the Vikings? This is ridiculous. Oh, by the way, Umiya wants me to stay in the Vikings, but Umiya is not at all convinced at all about any of this. And this void, he's like, dude, this was like the most crystal clear stab, just classic stab, absolutely. But it's okay because he didn't stab me, so this is fine. We'll be okay. We can work this. And I can't kick him out, so have to. The "this is fine" meme. He might have even posted it, but no, it was great. So that was Umiya's perspective on the whole thing. I think Spitsbergen was also convinced there was a stab, and Spitsbergen was a strategist. Wasn't a fan of that. King of Prussia is like, maybe a stab. Like, I am confident if Helsingfors didn't say, yeah, Ezio didn't stab me, it would have been too much and I couldn't have gotten out of it. But, like, Helsingfors just said, nah, dude, that wasn't a stab, so boom, we're safe.
They helped you so much. I think I remember I was outright saying, hey, Ezio clearly stabbed here as well. So I was throwing shade at you for most of this early game just because I thought it was funny.
Yeah, so you'll notice I haven't talked about anyone else on the map except for the local people whose orders actually matters here. But something that I cannot stress enough is that everyone from all over the map was coming into our chats and saying, oh my god, Ezio is a stabber. Oh my god, he can't trust the Vikings. I can't believe Ezio did this. How surprising, /S. All of this sorts of crap. Like, Rabat should have been on my shit list for this, but he wasn't. Rabat, by the way, stabbed his ally in Lisbon, doing the exact same thing that I did. Didn't get a lot of flack for it. That's fine.
I do remember Rabat being, like, extremely anti-you for basically the whole game.
Just no reason. They didn't do anything to piss them off. I wasn't caring about any of this part of the map, and yet people are coming up here. Naples is coming up here and posting crap. Freiburg is active, but at least Freiburg is, like, the head of an alliance. And so, like, and his alliance kind of neighbors us, so has some reason to be talking about things that are happening on other sides of the map. But just, like, Kiev is being annoying. Kiev now in Moldova. Like, just so many people just come up into the chat and are just like, oh my god, Ezio's a stabber. Can't trust Ezio. Wow, he's gonna win the game if they just let him get away with it. Like, oh my god.
This is the problem with your newfound fame. Like, going into a game with, I think at least 60 of these players knew who we were and had watched Diplo strats. That is the problem of being the focus of attention, yes.
It had its upside though, because it gave my input more weight than it should have. When I was talking about stuff in Iberia or in the HBE, which actually I think really got formed right around here, is when it started to get its shit together. Or kind of started to get its shit together. Anyways, like, people listened to me far more than they should have. Not because I lie, but because I can't influence the board. Mm-hmm. Because, like, I have no influence on what's going to happen near Corsica. But Corsica's a Viking, so I can talk about it. So, like, sure. Right? So these sorts of things would happen, and I would give input, and people would, like, again, give weight to that input, and I don't understand why. But I think it's because I had this extra clout for no reason.
Yep. But yeah.
But, oh god, it was so annoying. Alright, so that's, like, the not so quick version of what happened in the Vikings this turn. Umeå, Finland, so Umeå, Stockholm, and Oslo are all building. Helsingfors and Reykjavik were stabbed. Dublin got kicked out, and were core. Spitsbergen is officially a Viking at this point. I don't know when exactly that happened, but right around here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was before here, but yes,
yeah, maybe before here. At some point, Corsica does its first audit, and Spitsbergen is on the audit then, so it's fine.
Yeah, speaking of Corsica here, they try and so I think Corsica doesn't go for the convoy, and Genoa tries to convoy them over into Genoa, and so this doesn't go through. And Dijon actually survives, despite not talking to anyone still. Just slips into Genoa on this turn. I don't know
Says.
what the hell is going on over here. This is like, I wasn't even looking at this part of the map, but what happened? Like, these guys work together against Aleppo, Georgia stabs, I guess, and this Sakasa also stabs, and Astrakhan also stabs? What is
The
this?
Caucasus, I don't think formed an alliance yet. I think the Caucasus talk to each other about stuff, and then Astrakhan stabs next year, and the HBE starts forming in reaction to the Caucasus thing forming, and then once Astrakhan stabs, then the HBE realizes they need to get their shit together to deal with Astrakhan. That's at Flume's creation, because then next year we have the three center powers that we need to start unifying against because the three center powers are winning.
Yeah, these
But
are...
that's a next year thing that we talk about.
Yes, and you can see another failed order here is someone deciding to again support the world convoy, going, why are we not world convoying? This is Porto because they know they're dead anyway, right? They knew Azores was coming back to Azores, they knew Nantes wasn't leaving because Nantes didn't want to let them in, and Porto was standing still. Although I think I would have still just ordered back to Porto in case they tried to cover Lisbon, but I guess...
Well, if they cover Lisbon, you don't need to move back.
Yeah, that is actually true. So this would be fine. I guess you do need to move back in case Rabat tries to take Porto here. But yeah, so
Yes.
at this point, Lisbon has also angered like all of Spain by stabbing Portugal. And Morocco is also just opportunistically looking at this here, so they are not looking so good, despite managing to get a centre, but then losing their home. This is an arranged bounce, I think. These guys are all starting to work together. I remember that Kiev, there was something important happening over here. I think Moldava went for Kiev at the start.
Yes.
Initially?
Yes, Moldavia got supported into Kiev, I think it was by Wilno. And then in the fall, you see Wilno got supported into Kiev from Warsaw, while Kiev and Poltava got supported into Moldavia. I think this is because Moldavia had some sort of negotiations with people in Wallachia and Jettison, and then that just fell through or somehow. I forget the exact specifics of it. I actually tracked this at some point because it was Commonwealth adjacent and I cared, but I don't remember.
Yeah. But we're looking at everything here. I guess the Commonwealth some things happen. Brandenburg gets killed by Bremen, as the Wheel agreed to do. And the Commonwealth is very clearly winning their war here, killing Gdansk as well.
Yes. Yeah, you see Prussia, the member of the Commonwealth, and Vikings working with Podolia, like work Krakow to get them back into Krakow. And Brandenburg gets eliminated, so Gdansk couldn't support me into Brandenburg anyways. It was cut for a million ways. And so this is keeping Krakow alive, which I was sad about. I would have loved to see Krakow die, but I can't tell Prussia to do that, obviously.
Yep.
So, yeah.
The most important thing that was happening from my perspective, no one stabs in the Wheel. What? How does
the
no
Wheel,
one...
like, even Venice, or Trieste in Venice, just didn't hold.
Yeah.
Like...
I was so convinced someone in this group was going to stab, because there was like at least 4 people who were barely talking here. Freiburg was clearly trying to enforce their will on people with those votes, right? And I was like, well, these people, they just joined to meme the Wheel, and now they're being forced out of the Wheel by someone who is clearly just self-interested. Why? Well, surely one of them is going to go for a dot, but no one does.
The big thing to learn, right, is that people will listen to someone who says something confidently and repetitively.
Yes.
This is the case in real life, and this is the case in meme diplomacy games.
I was trying to also say things confidently.
Yeah, but Freiburg...
But yeah, Freiburg was in their
and
alliance.
no one's going to listen to you, CaptainMeme, come on.
Yep,
You're
and
British.
this is also very sad to see. Luxembourg decides to move out into Liège to get an angle of attack on us. He did initially try and negotiate Paris away from Paris, like saying, "Hey, can I just nab Paris and take the dot?" And Paris just says no. Which, yeah, it kind of ends up becoming a thing. Like, it was quite obvious to me early on that Lux was very desperate to get the second supply center quite early, and he keeps trying to negotiate for it and not quite managing to get there. But he has managed to embed himself in a really strong alliance here, as evidenced by the fact that none of them stab. What the hell is this?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I am really panicked now. I'm seeing Luxembourg in Liège. I'm seeing Strasbourg in Hesse. Paris is clearly not going to stab Luxembourg now that the entirety of this wheel has mobilized without any of them stabbing each other. So my initial plan of, hey, we can get Paris on side and then just move against Luxembourg together, that's out the window as well. I think Paris is likely going to help this attack on me because I told them it was okay to do so, right? Hoping that I would then be able to pivot on the next turn. And initially I just thought, okay, well, I'd initially pitched as a thing when I was trying to say, hey, Paris, you do your thing. I'd said, okay, it's fine. We'll escape off to Britain or something, and it'll be fine. I did not think that plan was ever going to work. I was very confident I needed to stay here, because if you leave your defenses and go for something like that with 1 year, basically you have 1 year to negotiate your way in, there's so many things that can change in Chaos and just make that fail, right? I did not want to rely on that, but I think it was about here where I was starting to go, maybe I will need to rely on that, maybe I will need to flee, because it was really starting to reach a painful point, especially with Kiel here in Wadden Sea. That was also really painful, although they had Gothenburg next to them now. So
they have Gothenburg next to them. Here's the thing that tilted me off a lot, because Salt posted very publicly, I move into the Wadden Sea, Copenhagen, please don't move into Kiel. And Copenhagen, as his life's mission of holding forever, was quite happy to comply to this. I'm sitting here, right, and I'm like, Copenhagen, move! Take the dot! Do you see? I have moved heaven and earth to try to get myself into a dot in Brandenburg. That didn't happen, so now I need to try to get into Helsingfors. It's so hard. Just take the dot, man. Take it. But I can't tell him to do that because that's what happened. Also, if I told him to do it, he just wouldn't do the move anyways. I'm confident. But, like, when your neighbor walks out of a dot and you're not getting threatened because we know that Rostock is supporting Bremen into Brandenburg and Skagerrak's moving into Jutland, you're safe. Just take it. It would have been so good. Like, yeah, I'm all for working with Salt, but, like, I don't need to work with Salt particularly. Anyone who's going to work with me works with me. I just thought Salt would be a good person. But no, then Copenhagen doesn't do it. I'm also confident that Kiel wouldn't have moved out. Like, Salt isn't going to leave if he thinks that Copenhagen's the type of person who's going to not him.
I don't think Kiel actually ever said, I am moving to Wadden, right?
I can check that. I'm pretty sure I wanted Copenhagen to make that move, but
yeah, no, I think it was kind of
anyways.
obvious that he was going out to Wadden because we agreed this self-bounce, right? But I don't think he ever said it publicly, which was maybe a reason why Copenhagen wouldn't have wanted to just try and move in. Are you checking that at the moment, or is that...
I'm not going to check it.
Yeah, I think
don't
there's
need
too many
any
messages
facts.
to go through. I do want to also say, I think this was a little bit earlier, but the specifically, like, the GM starts putting these little logos on places where people want them to be, right? So the turtle, I don't think there's any more yet, but a lot more of them will pop up later in the game when people basically ask to have a coat of arms on their unit or whatever. At the same time, the GM offered to every major alliance to have their own emoji, right? I can't remember what the Vikings ended up having. Did that? I don't think it ended up being a very important thing, generally speaking. Like, these guys down here had a lump of coal for the coalition. The wheel had just a picture of the wheel. except not the wheel wheeling, because they hadn't managed that. It was just the provinces around it. And my little alliance here, we were considered major enough, even though it was only 3 of us, to get our own one. Which we... I had a conversation with Amsterdam and Utrecht about this. What should we make our logo? And Amsterdam suggested that we could have, like, our own Latin catchphrase. Which would be, because he's in the Netherlands in this game, and this is very stereotyping, it would be, alone we are low, together we are high. That is what he wanted. And so, we initially translated that into Latin, it came out as something else. I was like, well, if we're going all in on the Dutch reference, let's translate it to Dutch at least. But then, of course, we can't actually pronounce the Dutch, and also Dutch, I'm sorry Dutch people, like, I am half Dutch myself, but the Dutch language looks incredibly silly sometimes. And the end of that sentence is just, I'm gonna mispronounce this horribly, but it is "we hoog," we're high, basically. And so, we just translated it to that. Sorry?
That was the origin of the Weehoog.
That was Weehoog, yeah. I think it's like hoog or something like that in actual Dutch. Despite me being half Dutch, I could almost be American myself and actually not having anything to do with my heritage. But oh god, maybe I should cut that out. That might be too offensive. But no, we had this, like, we all just started laughing when we saw this Weehoog thing come out of the translator. We're just like, okay, we'll grab that as our logo. It's just like Weehoog from now on. This is what we do. And for the entire rest of this game, whenever we're, like, talking together, we would always just post the Weehoog emoji, which was just a really bad, like, Comic Sans bright orange thing with, like, a terrible drop shadow that just said Weehoog. And so this becomes like the catchphrase of our alliance. We are hooged out here. We high. It is not very relevant to the game, but it is something I wanted to mention. Well, not very relevant to what happens in the game. So yeah, Ezio, is there anything else you want to talk about on this phase?
England. So, you'll notice that in England, in addition to Dublin stabbing Eddie, right, by taking Reykjavik, they also stabbed Eddie by not supporting Eddie into Plymouth.
Yes.
But Plymouth, the London, now in Plymouth, moves back to London to cover from Amsterdam, who was taking it. And because of the lack of support in the Plymouth, London, in spite of the potential attempted attack on them, is now going +1. And is now on 2, which is a really good place to be. And London was working with Oxford the entire time throughout this. And so it seems like we're in a, like, they have a solid 2-person alliance there, and then there's going to be Eddie and Dublin working together on the other side of it. And so it seems like there might be equilibrium, and then we can coordinate to attack them or not, or they can try to do something else. But that's what happened in Great Britain with Plymouth and London staying alive on 2.
Yep.
Yep.
Aye. I remember Ireland in their video, and also just before that. No, I think it was during the video. They say, "Hey Edinburgh, I still want to be your friend, and I've arranged this bounce so you stay alive, even though I'm not giving you the support." Right? And I think that works out for them. I think Edinburgh is still kind of happy with them after this phase. But, like, as mentioned, it was really hard to track what was going on. Yeah. So, is there anything else here to talk about? Or shall we move ahead?
I think we can see another move.
Okay.
Praise be.
So, we're gonna see the disbands here, right? A lot of units coming off. They have valid disbands, but they're gonna die anyway because it's coming into the build phase now. And this is the clean map. We have the builds. Obviously not very relevant to me, outside the fact that Paris is building another one next to me, but
this isn't builds yet.
Is it not builds?
This is before builds. No, builds aren't in.
Oh, no, I mean pre-builds, sorry. They are
Oh,
about to build.
pre-builds, yes. Yeah.
Shall we just skip ahead into the builds, or do you
Yeah,
have
let's just see
stuff
the
to...
builds.
Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
oh, oh, yeah. So negotiation again. As Vikings, I get to tell people what to build because I am that person. So I told Oslo, of course, build another fleet. Jesus Christ, build another fleet. Please, for the love of God, build another fleet.
uh,
Um, yes. And then I built the fleet, and then Umiat built an army. As discussed, Umiat is going to be taking Helsingfors, and we're going to be okay. And then everything's fine. And Prussia built an army. Never mind. We got to talk about the build. Sorry, sorry, sorry. Oh. So, the Commonwealth. And Wilna built an army, of course, which is great. So, the Commonwealth was saying, hey, Prussia, build a fleet. Because we want you to work with the Vikings to attack northern Germany by building a fleet in Prussia. Is a claim that Krakow made. And that's just absurd. Like that, the fleet built in Prussia doesn't actually help them with anything except attacking the Vikings. And Prussia is not happy with that. Right? Prussia's like, no, I don't want to do that. And everyone else in the Vikings is like, dude, don't do that, just build an army. And Prussia talks to the other Commonwealth members and is like, hey guys, look, that fleet isn't going to be useful. This army is going to be useful. I can support hold Warsaw if we get attacked. It can be productive if Gdansk gets pushed out. We can do other things. But like right now, this like a fleet is just not going to be good. It's just going to increase tensions. And the other people are like, yeah, okay, makes sense, sounds good. So Wilno's fine with that. And everyone says they're fine with it. But there was a lot of tension around that build in the negotiations of this phase. And then it all simmered down, but no worries about it. I need to remember that. It's fine.
I kind of get why the Commonwealth didn't want an army build here. Like, where's it going? They're kind of surrounded by other Commonwealth members, right? And they can push into Warsaw now. It's a bit... I would be a little nervous about these double Prussian armies on their fronts.
Yeah, counterpoint is building a bunch of armies is good. You're mostly landlocked. Like, just having a bunch of armies is good. That army in Prussia can actually support hold Warsaw. People can move out and make moves. Like, it can happen. So,
yep.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. I don't think there's much to say on my part during the builds. Like, none of the wheel got a build, right? The only person over here who's relevant is Paris. Should be noted, Paris and I are still quite friendly. Like, I had outright told them, hey, prioritize yourself over me. It's, it's important for you to do your thing and make sure that you do well out of this game, even if I'm not going to. And I think they took that as, like, a very friendly, they like, stayed friendly with me, despite the fact that we're on opposing sides of this war, basically, because of that. But that isn't going to stop them from helping the attack on me, because they're committed to doing that, right? Yeah. So, should we just advance from builds here? I don't think there's that much more to talk about.
Well, I mean, I want to say what the moves I'm thinking here,
Let's
because the
go to the
Vikings
clean
moves
map.
are a thing. Yeah, clean map. Then that's
okay.
fine.
Go for it.
So agreements with the Vikings. Umia's got to take Helsingfors. I want to stay on 2 centers. I don't have that many centers I can take. It's like most of them are Vikings. Except for one convenient center that is near us. Oh, we need to talk about the Bumbleism.
Oh yeah,
Bumbleism
we do.
is a
Oh my
huge
god,
thing.
we missed this.
Yeah, I can't believe we skipped this. So yes, as part of me killing Helsingfors accidentally, the Hells said, "All right, but Ezio, you need to become a Bumble, and you need to let the spirit of Bumbleism flow through you."
Oh my god.
And so I, of course, I add Bumble to my name. I forget how I did it. I think I made it Bumblezio.
I think Finland also adds Bumble to their name, right?
Yes, Finland also adds Bumble to his name because It's one of those things that if I'm looking at it, of course I'm making my name Bumble. It costs me nothing, and apparently people actually care about this. So yes, of course. Um,
uh, okay,
yes.
do we?
So yeah.
Yeah. So the other thing that happens here, I think you're more like clued in. You were listening to this more, but Helsingfors also designates their official Pope replacement person, right, as the new leader of the Bumbles.
Yes. So, and a couple of things happen with this. So, first of all, Helsingfors becomes the holy site of Bumbleism. The Bumble Helsingfors gets given a new title, the Martyr of of the religion of Bumbleism. And so they became the place. This became the holy site and the place of honor and importance to the religion. And so they said that this site could only ever be held by Bumbles from here until the end of the game. And so I realized if I needed Finland to take Helsingfors, because I needed Finland to stay on side by giving Finland a center, we can be okay. I needed them to be a Bumble so they could take it and not have it be breaking the tenets of the religion. And Helsingfors Bumble, we're just gonna call him Helsingfors and not Bumble, because calling him Bumble with Bumbleism gets so weird. So we needed. He became retroactively a pope, a person of power to the religion, and was important. And then, yes, he designated Narva, who is still being snarky and shitty and annoying and trying to kill us, and like talking about not trying to kill us explicitly, but saying negative things about the Vikings and me the entire time constantly. Not wanting to work with
you,
us, but feeling
you
forced to work with us.
you
Yeah.
mean they were pointing out that your stab was a real stab?
Um, again, calling it a real stab, like, I don't think it's a real stab if I told somebody to bounce me. The fact that I realized that they didn't think that they were bouncing me doesn't make it not a stab.
It was absolutely a
Doesn't
stab.
make it a stab.
But
You can
sure, I'll
look.
I'll allow you to continue
I
saying
I
that
told
Nava's statements were
Helsingfors.
completely unjustified and that you
Oh,
would never
completely
take
unjustified.
a single censor from anyone.
No, I told them to bounce me. I maintained to say that. And it was more than just about me stabbing. It was just more like Narva was trying to coordinate with the Commonwealth at this point to say, "Hey, if I join the Commonwealth, would you guys work with me against the Vikings?" Question mark. When there were the negotiations about Brandenburg and how Brandenburg was doing anti-Viking press, Narva was shutting in and saying like, "Hey, Brandenburg wasn't actually that bad. Brandenburg was totally fine and totally justified in everything they were saying. Like, you guys shouldn't listen to Ezio at all." Um, and then this phase wasn't going to work with us anymore because they said, hey, we have to move back to Narva, and that's not useful to Finland. And then Narva was even saying hostile things to Finland, which is not a good look. So, yes, and also Narva happens to be in my expansion path, and so I would love to take it. So, that was a big thing. And then, because Narva became the second Bumble Pope, other prominent Bumble members, I think, was Bremen, who is now
Yes.
in Brandenburg. They were a prominent Bumbleite, Bumble, whatever. Um,
Yep.
Narva,
There are a lot of bumbles.
Edinburgh was a Bumble. Edinburgh was an important Bumble.
I think Ireland was also a
I
bumble. I
don't.
might be
Maybe it's
mistaken there,
possible.
actually.
Ireland might have been a Bumble. Like tons of people were
Oh, I
Bumbles.
was not a bumble at this point, by the way, because your previous Helsingfors, when I was a bumble, at some point during this whole Kiel, myself mega war of words type thing, Kiel had said something like, hey, Vikings, I can work with you because I'm going to go kill CaptainMeme. And Helsingfors goes to them, oh yeah, that sounds like a great idea, go and kill CaptainMeme. And I was like, wait, why did I join this stupid Bumble thing if you're gonna tell people to attack me? And they went, oh, I forgot you were a Bumble, sorry. But then I just left Bumbleism as out of principle and became an ex-Bumble.
Makes sense.
But yeah, it has nothing to do with what happened this phase, so carry on.
Great. So I'm deciding. All right, I'm gonna hope to go to Gulf of Finland. Now here, I think if Narva realizes we're gonna take Narva this phase, then Piskov can tap Helsingfors, and then Umia doesn't get in to Helsingfors, and then I can't get supported into Narva. So I might then lose Helsingfors. So if here Narva bounced Helsingfors in the spring, I have no idea how our alliance works anymore because I don't think I'm gonna let Finland just take Helsingfors if I'm not pretty confident I'm gonna take Narva. So I don't know. Thankfully we don't. So that's like a huge concern of mine, but I have no way to do it. I'm happy to see Pskov and Narva just say, "I'm going to cover Narva, so Ezio can't walk in." And I'm ecstatic to see that, and I just hope that continues to happen. Um, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. The Great Britain front. So, here, London is really passive still. Like, oh my God, how'd I get onto two centers? I'm alive. Whatever. Oxford is now trying to talk to Edinburgh to attack London.
Yep.
Who is renamed to Wessex, I think.
Yeah.
I don't remember why. Because Oxford was working with London last turn, so why are they gonna flip?
This is the
I don't.
question that we all had, I think, during the game. Like, Oxford's motivations were quite difficult to figure out. They also talked to Amsterdam about attacking London together at this point, I think.
Yeah, but like they'd offered to support Amsterdam into London, right?
That's next turn, but yeah.
That was this. Oh, okay. I thought that was last turn.
Sorry, they didn't offer to support Amsterdam into London. The Ireland Edinburgh thing, I think they asked Amsterdam to attack London as like a either we get this or Amsterdam gets this.
Then Oxford support held Plymouth.
Oxford support held Plymouth, yeah, to try and help.
That was
London.
part of the chaos at the end to make everything go crazy. Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Let's not spend too much time analyzing England. It's not.
It's a rabbit hole that gets deep. So as the Vikings, I'm like, hey, we've got a lot of people over here. Greenland Sea has a guess because Ireland has 2 units in Reykjavik and Dublin, and so they can only cover 2 out of 3 of Rockall, Iceland Base, and Reykjavik. So Greenland Sea, go for your bet, go for your guess. 1/3 chance to get in. Not great odds, but it's fine. Keeps Ireland tapped down. Meanwhile, Trondheim coordinate with Oslo to get into North Sea. Make sure we conquer it. Meanwhile, Oslo can like go to Skagerrak, I think. Or maybe Bergen. I think I try to get Oslo into Bergen even. To just get out. So we can keep pressure on the British Isles and maybe make some progress. Meanwhile, we're trying to work with like Eddie. We're trying to talk to these lunatics to get them to work with us against any of the other ones because clearly that's a mess. And trying to work with the other people in that mess is not going to work out, but whatever. We're working on that diplomatically. Youth London and Copenhagen. I want them to stay alive and stay neutral right now. I don't want to do anything crazy because the wheel is mobilizing and the war, we don't make that much progress trying to conquer like Kiel and Rostock here. So whatever, we'll just be friendly. Bremen built a fleet, which is not great, but also a fleet in Bremen really doesn't get closer to the Baltic Sea, so it's not really an issue. Like, we're fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Bremen was, like, still quite suspicious about Salt at this point, but was kind of, like, just... I don't want to annoy the wheel by attacking him, right? So, I think he was looking for an opportunity to grab Kiel, but wasn't outright saying that he was going to do it.
That makes sense.
But yeah, so, shall we go to what was going on for me, or do you have more?
Yeah, no. Go to you, please.
Okay.
God.
So what was happening to me focuses quite a lot on the wheel. Who would have guessed? Specifically, they have a bunch of members adjacent to me, right? They're not central wheel members, but they are adjacent to me. And the wheel at this point are having this interesting debate over whether they're going to end up at war with the Vikings or not. They're also completely surrounded by people they've aligned themselves with. At this point, they're talking about, hey, we can take Genoa, right? Because Genoa is not aligned with them. It was originally Dijon, they don't talk. That's a target. They're also saying, hey, we can take Bene, which is Ghent, Amsterdam, Utrecht. They are not aligned with us. Everything else, I think Sarajevo, I think the Commonwealth are on side with them. Like, everything else, they're going, hey, we're going to be kumbaya with these people, we are not going to attack them. And I was trying to point out how incredibly ludicrous that is. Like, someone in that situation, if someone is happy with that situation, they are going to stab. They are looking for their expansion inwards if they're not looking for what the Alliance can expand into outwards. Right? So I was making a very big point of this. Hey, Freiburg is the one who's trying to get you to go to be at peace with the Vikings, right? To be at peace with everyone around you. Then clearly not going to gain anything from the I was going to say Benelux invasion, but it is just the Benny invasion now. They are going to stab someone. That was what I was trying to, like, convince people of. And I think I somewhat convinced Luxembourg, because during this turn, they started then trying to say, hey, I might go back to Luxembourg. Can we start working with these guys to fight the Vikings? Because the Vikings are going to be a bigger threat here. And Kiel was like, no, we need to attack. Freiburg was like, no, we are going to attack. These guys in the wheel were all like, okay, you know, whatever, we're just not going to talk all that much. And so Luxembourg starts going, okay, well, I'm going to try and convince people of this, but I'm not going to put myself out there, right? Because I'm at too much risk. But then we start going, hey, can we have some votes going on as to what will happen here? Luxembourg is, I'm not going to start a vote. I don't want to annoy people, right? So because the wheel are doing everything by democracy, I start a vote and I start saying, hey, we should have Benelux on side to go against the Vikings because the Vikings are more of a threat. And Freiburg goes, no, that vote is not acceptable. It's not being proposed by someone inside the Alliance. And at this point, I'm kind of desperate because I know if I get kicked out of Ghent, my odds of survival are not incredibly high, right? I don't really have great relations with anyone over here to try and get a dot. London has both of these centres, so getting in here would be kind of difficult. And Amsterdam is trying to convince me to support him into London, which then means I would be dying in doing so. I don't think he would have been willing to do the same in the other way around, because he was trying to convince me to do that, right? So I am pretty desperate right now and looking for a way to stay alive. So I say to people, hey, in the wheel, if someone in the wheel can start this poll for me so Freiburg can't accuse it of being illegitimate, I will give you a shout out in the video. I will make my first words in the video anything you want them to be. Like, because I knew that a lot of people on this board are interested in Diplostrats, I was like, that's kind of the only leverage I have here, and it's really scummy to use. But I also thought it would be hilarious to use. And Strasbourg took me up on that, and they created the poll, and they sent me a bunch of words to say at the start of the video, which I did say at the start of the video. There you go, that is why that sentence began this video. Unfortunately.
Question, CaptainMeme.
Yeah, carry on.
Was Strasbourg a big fan of Diplostrats? Were they really excited to get this?
You know the answer to this because I sent you the thing. Okay, so Strasbourg, after I did Strasbourg said, okay, I'll do it for the shout out. They set up the poll for it, right? And we'll get to the results of that in a second. But then I said to them, hey, okay, so you can say whatever you can send me whatever you want me to say at the start of the video. They took like a couple weeks to decide on something. They sent it to me, and then they said, oh, by the way, what's your channel? So it wasn't even someone who knew what Diplostrats was. I sent back saying, oh yeah, we run a Diplostrats channel, and he was like, oh, I think I've heard of that.
I'm just saying, clout is what you make of it. And if you just pretend to have clout, people will buy it.
So there you go, this can work for you too. Just say you'll shout someone out on your YouTube channel, even if you don't have one, and someone might take you up on it.
Also, by the way, if in future games you, as a viewer, need us to give a shout out to someone, feel free to use us as part of your negotiations.
Oh my god, no, we are not doing that.
Yeah, we'll do it. Yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, maybe CaptainMeme won't, but I will.
What, are we just going to start every video with a list of people?
It can't always be the start of the video. Oh, it's not going to be the start of the video. No. I'll just drop it in the video at some point.
Oh my god,
That's
you know
so
how
time.
other channels have like their Patreon supporters thanked at the end of the video? Do we just go through and give all the shoutouts from viewers that they need to get the negotiations done?
Hey, if it works, if it works. I'm just saying, I have parts of every video, roughly every 2 years, that I don't particularly enjoy doing. And I'm just saying, I have time to do shoutouts when I'm talking about in those power rankings. So maybe.
Oh my god. Okay, I'm gonna add an addendum to that and say we may not shout out your shout out. This is not a guarantee.
Give it a try, see what
What have you
happens.
committed us to it? Yeah, this... Anyway, so Strasbourg set up this poll, right? And I went ahead and said, hey, okay, I will shout out anyone who votes yes on this poll as well. Because I'm like going all in on just trying to get people to leave me alive at this point. So I have a list of people I also need to shout out. Stockholm voted yes on the poll. Why did you
I
vote yes
did.
on the poll? You weren't
I'm
eligible.
supporting solidarity. Yeah.
Alright, so I need to shout out, I think, Ezio. Yeah, you, big fan, I'm sure. Hello, Ezio. Good. Yeah, thank you for this. So, I also need to shout out the man 83554, who was Utrecht, who voted yes. Madrid voted yes. Bumbling Sophie. Really ugly Bacchus Ray. Bacchus Ray voted yes. Tunis voted yes. Edinburgh voted yes. So Tunis is Hannah. Edinburgh is Mumblin Moth, the Martyr of Edin. Luxembourg voted yes, so Fyodor, thank you for that vote. And Bremen voted yes. So that's Johann von Bumbweeble. Thank you. You will note there are not a lot of actual wheel votes in that. Because Freiburg was like, how dare you do this? This is completely unacceptable that you're getting this vote happening. And I think he appeared so angry that he kind of intimidated all of the wheel people to not vote in that poll. So it didn't work. But it was like a thing that happened. That was just... Thank you everyone who voted yes. I appreciate your votes. But anyway, I decide at this point, okay, I need to make a run for it. There's no way I'm staying alive, because Luxembourg just commits to attacking me again after this vote fails. Strasbourg is already committed. Paris is like, I like you, dude, but I've got to go with the wheel here. So agrees to it as well. I'm just like, okay, well, my only path. I have to run to the channel. And Amsterdam offers to support me in because they think I'm going to support them into London on the next turn. So yeah, that is...
I all want to take this moment to point out that Paris does not have to work with the wheel here. Just Paris could totally take Luxembourg.
They could, right? But the problem is that these people aren't stabbing. So...
They like move to the east, and the wheel has a total of how many units exactly?
1, 2,
Like 6
3,
units?
6, 7, 8 on this front.
Sure, after you stab Luxembourg, right, that unit goes away?
Yeah,
I
so
think in the
7.
spring you still work with it, but then you just dot them in the fall, right? You could probably dot Strasbourg too.
So I had considered that. I was thinking there might be a chance that Paris takes Luxembourg here, but I was thinking that doesn't save me, right? It's too late.
Oh, yeah. No, you gotta run still, for sure. Just like Paris' statement of, like, I think people saw the wheel as, like, this actual scary force. Because I don't think anyone actually considered going to war with it except for, like, me and, like, I don't know, nobody else really, because I was the only one who was the head of a big alliance. Maybe the Commonwealth thought about it. And, like, the Commonwealth, despite only having 4 people in it, has 6 centers. They're all armies, and they're dense, and they can't mobilize to attack particularly effectively, but they can make good progress onto, like, Vienna if they want. And for the wheel to fight the Commonwealth will take a huge number of their units. So if anyone else attacks the Commonwealth, or attacks the wheel, the Commonwealth is going to do really well in that war. So I think people were way too scared of the wheel in general. and it's relatively easy to just crush it. But we'll see. We'll see.
Well, I certainly
what
couldn't
happens.
crush it with these 3 fleets.
With your 3 fleets, you could not attack the wheel. You had to run. Absolutely.
I think
Get
they
out of there.
certainly chose their enemies well in terms of people who couldn't fight back.
Yeah, take the easy battles.
Yep. But that is about everything that's relevant to me on this turn. I don't know if you, do you have any? Well, you probably have stuff to talk about, right?
I mean, I talked about a lot of it. I'm still a Viking. Dublin is not. We're trying to make progress against Great Britain. We're trying to find someone in Great Britain who's going to stab the others and work with us. But it can't be Dublin because Dublin just stabbed us.
Yes.
We want to kill Dublin. Killing Dublin is top priority. Everything else in Great Britain is now lower priority.
You have to make an example of Dublin specifically, right? For the stabbing the
Because Dublin
Vikings.
stabbed. The only one of the Vikings who stabbed on the first turn.
Obviously, yes. No one else stabbed.
No one else stabbed on the first turn, so they must be made an example of.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah.
Alright.
Okay.
Cool. So we can see the moves. Also, CaptainMeme, it is 11:30, and I need to be home at noon. So...
Shall we call this one here and continue doing it another time?
I think I think we should now pause it here after showing these moves so people can take a look at it and see what's going on, and then we can start talking about the rest of year 2 next time.
How did we only get to year 2?
We're halfway through the second year, Captain.
Okay, well, this will be a multi-part series. Thank you for watching the first part. Oh my god. You know, when I was thinking what would be our next series after the longest game of all time, I did not think an 8-year game.
It's gonna be a series. Oh no.
Oh my god, and this is without me covering, like, the other people's voids.
This isn't talking about the Mediterranean at all.
Sorry, Mediterranean people, there's tons of interesting stuff going on here, but it's just not relevant enough to us. Okay, well, thank you, we'll leave it on that. Thank you everyone for watching this part 1. We will go in with the rest of it, and I think we will go faster on the rest of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the things, if you looked at the graphs of the total number of messages over time, less happens as far as press. Less press is sent every phase throughout the game.
I think we're like here at this point, right? So
yeah, so don't get me wrong. Lots is going to happen still. There's going to be a lot to talk about, but less and less each phase. But the game gets more interesting as the phases pass. Like the actual tactics and the moves, but less chaos.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you next time. This has been the 81 player game part 1.
The biggest diplomacy of all time.